Welcome back to the Geometric View, episode 77, season 7. Today is Halloween. This episode is Halloween. And we're going to get into portals. What is it? What is a portal? How do portals open? What exists inside of portals? How does that have to do with the Dougherty set? Love is watching. So the 2022 Electromagnetic Universe World Expo was amazing. We'll be releasing the
link is in the show notes below
on this channel.
Let's get into the circuit.
The Geometric
We
View.
appreciate your support. The best way to donate to us is on PayPal. Just send money directly to goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Over the weekend, and there was no recording of it. Do you think you'll find a little bit of time to put some of those images together?
Yes, that's one of the pieces that I was planning on working on today. That, along with the ES and the master plan and all of those different documents that the second package is going over to our friend.
I was going to say, don't forget about our special slideshow for our other special friend.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm hoping to have that meeting this Friday.
Okay.
Anybody else on? Okay, Jonathan's on.
Morning, guys.
Good morning.
Morning. So Jonathan, to catch you up, we are talking about, and Andy, we are talking about portals. And I don't know how much Aaron wants to share about his situation, or however you want to say, his own like anecdotal evidences. But I will talk briefly about how in the past I have on multiple occasions in different shows, mostly this show, but also on the Electric View, talked about that when mankind got involved with electricity, we didn't know enough about it to understand what it would mean vis-a-vis communications with extraterrestrials, hyperdimensional beings, spirits, different things like that. And the reason why that keeps hitting me is that we found that ghosts are plasmoids that move on some kind of spiraling motion. And now Buddy is talking to us about these geometries, and we know from my whimsical research, or we have a deep suspicion at least, that atomic mass energy interfaces to the unified ether field, which interfaces to the force. So looking at all of this, and that's the plasma electromagnetic unified force. And so when we're looking at all of this, we are wondering about the potentiality of these geometries, that portals may actually have a geometric shape, but specifically a surface area, just to start with a tunnel behind it. So we were talking about whether or not we would be capable of developing a scientific routine of discovering, ways of either moving, controlling, destroying, or creating tunnels, or at least instead of creating, maybe transforming bad tunnels. The best example that the audience can go with is there was a house in Florida, I think it was, that was filled with hundreds of thousands of brown recluses. There was no reason for these brown recluses. It wasn't like an infestation of rats that they took over and they were consuming them. They just appeared in the house. And I've also done work that was similar to what I did for your friend, but where a client sent me Zillow photos of a house, and I detected a portal in a brick wall, and it was an old chimney, and Madam Catherine also detected the same portal independently. So I didn't give her my thoughts. I just sent her the photos, and she's picked up the same one. When I saw the portal, I felt wind going through me, and that was confirmed independently by a trained and natural psychic. So what Aaron and I were talking about, it's good that Buddy joined because it touches his work, is possibility that these tunnels are geometric, and that there's some way of actually controlling them or working with them. And historically, of course, people have used crystals, they've used consecrated salt, they've used oil, rosemary. And, could we discern the science that if there are chemicals that can make you instantly sick, and then there's chemicals that can make you instantly healthy, and those do exist, where you feel that instant shift, then I don't see why there wouldn't be ways to create chemicals, magnetics, and other vibratories, so sound, light, lasers, etc., to control these surfaces, to where if you had a portal wall, you could point something at it. And I will tell you, and I'm not trying to freak anybody out, that Catherine will not stay in hotels anymore, because she says all the hotel mirrors have become portals. Everyone that she's been to, they've all become portals. And if there is some kind of, if we've advertised through our use of electricity and we've become McDonald's signs throughout the universe, there could potentially be an invasion of body snatchers that is a hyperdimensional spiritual invasion, where they're interested in taking over these super chimpanzee machines that we have and driving out the human spirit, which is, of course, as most of us on the call believe, created by God in his image. So that's where the discussion was. I thought we would move it over to the pulse in order to, utilize some brain power. If Aaron, do you want to share, or do you just want, to hear from Buddy about his work, or how do you want to go forward?
Yeah, I can share real quick. So my house has a portal in one of the closets, like downstairs closets, and it's caused a lot of like bad energy and seepage and like stuff like that. We had like I actually opened up the underside of the house at one point to redo the plumbing, and oh my goodness, it unloaded a whole crap show.
Yeah, but some of that was like native spirits coming up through the pipes.
Yeah. Yeah, there was everything from like tall whites, like walking around my house, like changing, like, because you know how if you have like a major shift in the etheric, then like some people will get like cold chills and shudder, but some people, like, they just involuntarily like start like puking, and that's exactly what my daughter ended up doing when that happened. But anyways, we got the pipe work and everything fixed under the house, and got all of that sealed back up. I threw some amethyst down in the hole with it, so that ideally it would keep things from coming up through the floor or whatever, so that it had some place to go back to. And then we sealed it all back up, and then
Can I make a recommendation in the future to use tourmaline?
Yes, I've got some tourmaline, but it's too expensive to put in the dirt right now.
No, well, I'm specifically haystack tourmaline, the black ones with long crystals.
Mm-hmm.
They can store a larger amount of charge than most of the average crystals. And I've had people fry crystals, literally hold the Herkimer diamond, and then at the end of the session, the diamond splits in half. So these haystack tourmalines are much tougher. Anyways, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we got the portal that's in that closet there, and it was causing some issues to where like we would take like 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards, or something like that, just with all of the things that would go on, like around the farm, around the house. Emotionally, everything was really tight, so it caused a lot of strain there. But we ended up using the Catholic chants, and because it has the temporal signature, like singing bowls and various different methods to, I guess, close everything to a point where it was manageable. And then we put up selenite on all of the entrances and exits to the house, and then some of the door frames and such. So everything is under control for the most part. But I was just talking about how everyone that I've talked to confirms that you don't have the ability to close them, or we don't. And this came after a dream of my daughter's, because she's already shown signs of having sight, but it was talking about how there's something that was opening them, and I just kept thinking, like, if there's something that's able to open them like that, like it's not like some naturally occurring phenomenon or something that's being um, manipulated or taken advantage of by some other entities or something, like that something really is like, oh, there's a McDonald's, let's put an exit right there, uh, um, then that implies that they can be closed or that they can be shifted. And like I was saying, everyone that I've talked to say they can't close them. They don't know anyone that can close them. All that they know how to do is move it from like one area of the house to like very laboriously move it from one area of the house over to another area of the house that's not as occupied and no one goes in there. So it was like who cares? Like it's not going to be feeding anything, um, or um, changing the destination. So both of which are extremely laborious, takes lots of incense and effort and intentions and collaboration and so on. And we were just kind of talking about that and how it really is like electricity. So they burned people at the stake for playing with electricity, like the God spark and all this other stuff. Then you've got like the scientific method came up and people were able to actually study it and then like figure out roughly what it was that they were um, messing with, and found out about the magnetic flux and the energy and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, like, there's so much that common scientists just debunk, because when Isaac Newton made the deal with the Catholic Church that everything that you could see and measure was physics and everything that you couldn't see or measure was metaphysics and property of the church, like that set us back in our electrical understanding so much. And this is another one of those fringe science type scenarios where everyone is thinking like, oh, it's got to be spiritual, it's got to be this I don't know, something that's beyond us. But then I think is like, but is it really? Like, if we were to approach something like this very empirically and with the scientific method, could we actually understand it like we now understand electricity? Um, like, could
It's quite
the
possible.
geometries
I
of the crystalline forms, like, yeah,
Let me
exactly.
jump in real quick. There, in the Taoist literature, there are descriptions of portals within the gemstones, and all these gemstones that they're talking, all the crystals that they're talking about, can act as prisms, which makes me think of an upcoming message that I'm going to be doing called the Optimistic, Sir Isaac Newton. The thing is that, you know, whether the establishment likes it or not, he belongs to us. He was a mystic. He was studying light primarily. His work with gravity was his speculation. It was his means to describe something that he couldn't yet understand. He didn't have the technology. He belongs rightfully to us, not to the Big Bangists. And he, in the same vein as Nikola Tesla, this man was extremely metaphysical. it would be an insult to his name, really, to try and not describe his work as mystical, because he was constantly performing interesting alchemies. He hid his work away because he knew it would get him in trouble, and he hid calculus because he didn't. It was just a trifling thing he used for himself. He didn't really. He obviously needed a competitive edge as well to keep his position. But I mean, the man was a pure genius. Now, if he's studying prisms because he's suspecting something is happening inside the prism, and then we see that the Taoists are talking about portals that you can use to see through time, specifically apophyllite and certain quartz crystals. The better the better the quartz crystal, the more likelihood you'll have a portal. I'm going to take a picture now, and I'm going to show you my smoky quartz. It has probably the best portal I've ever personally held. Give me a second. But these gifts are related to his science, and I think that we have every right to explore that, and probably every responsibility.
Well, Tesla apparently was quite a close friend of Walter Russell, and so I'm sure they combined ideas, especially when it came down to the vortex mathematics. Now, it seems like the sacred geometries describe thousands of phenomena that exist in relationships, and there are definite causal. Well, there are definite numerical relationships, for example, between and these are geometric relationships between time and space. He postulates that because these shapes repeat fractally when you use in various different types of roots, that these cycles become evident when you're looking in terms of these fractal roots that aren't evident previously. And then when you look at all the phenomena which is laid out before us, all the astronomical phenomena, for example, the massive coincidence that the moon is 400 times closer than the sun and 400 times smaller, and there are relationships between the circumference of Mercury's orbit and the size of the Earth, and these relationships, when they come out through these geometries, they come out in terms of pi and the Euler number for growth, and they repeat at various scales, and so that this now we're using a clock that could be slightly aberrant of by, I think, 10 milliseconds, they say, over the next 2 billion years, and it's the decay rate of cesium. Now, it's remarkable that decay rate of cesium is like within a millionth of a percent of the time established numerically by the ancient system of 360 days, and add 5 on, and they were just so highly accurate using the mathematics of of root 70 of mod 24. Prime numbers have been cracked for the first time using sacred geometries. I'm sure this knowledge was evident a long time ago, but it's reappeared now. So all the like I say, all the 64-bit encryption is a goner. You're gonna have to think of new ways to encrypt data. and so there are so many other absolute revelations coming out of these geometries. I think science spends billions of pounds coming to exactly the same numbers of what that all of us can start to calculate. And when we look at these geometries, when we start looking at these geometries, new shapes start to appear, and that is the job of the artist and the engineer, and how to use these interlocking shapes and how they relate to the rest of the universe. And I'm sure that if you use these principles, things of beauty and massive efficiency are designable. Well, in terms of art and engineering efficiency, and relationships between various phenomena become evident, like light and music is just sound is an extension of the electromagnetic spectrum, and it's mathematically provable. And so we've got to use this information. We've got to find ways of looking at this information, and it's by using this, by able to construct these geometries. Like
Before
Buddy,
I open it up wider, I just want to point to people the things that are in the crystal. You can see obviously the geometry driven nature of the smoky quartz crystal. You can also see, if you look, there's a bit of a hologram effect, where you can see clearly where the flaw in the crystal is, and that's where the portal is. And then there's almost like an after image that happens, and you rotate it, it disappears and appears again. And then obviously when you turn it to the side, you get the prism effect. And then you see that the light even comes up to the other face, and it takes a sharp turn, comes towards your eye. Plus you have that wonderful triangular window. Plus the smaller window, that little small window there, the little trapezoid in between the faces, is considered also useful and special. So there's, I think, the hologram is very visible on the third image, the way you turn it, but it tends to disappear at other angles. So, they were staring into these and experiencing something. And then we have like the thing that I shared in the group, with where the spider is bleeding out of the walls, almost as if the property is manufacturing a yen species, which spiders are yen. And then you have the experience that he's talking about in his home, which I can confirm. So I've slept in that room. There is definitely a portal in that closet, and it'll defend itself, which is interesting. And then there's the experiences I've talked about on the show before, with going with Catherine out and her cleansing houses. So the junction between all these, and it looks like Jonathan wants to talk about, like, I guess, Freemason programmed portal geometry. That's an interesting idea. I've not been to the Arch du
I don't want
Triomphe.
to talk about Freemasons at all.
Okay. But I've not been to the Arch de Triomphe, and so I couldn't tell you. Like, when I look at the structure, I'm not getting any information, but I'm not Catherine, so I haven't been there to put my hands up to actually feel the energy coming. But you can do energy over digital, especially. I tend to buy stones. If I buy stones, I get that thing. I buy stones off of Etsy. I'll actually detect energies coming through the stone, through the digital. And then I mentioned the other day about my friend who had killed himself, and his picture showing up on like a fax machine or a printer or something like that, just showing up on a page that was being printed of text, and a JPEG somehow like came out of the ether, so to speak, and printed onto the thing, and it was his face. So there are interesting intersectional geometries happening. The question is, what would it take to do what Aaron's proposing? And also, would my idea of a Langmuir probe attached to with coils around a copper ring that also had coils, so the magnetics would generate through from touching the plasmoid, then the other coils going and touching then going and wrapping around a crystal and having an LED light in the circuit in the series to indicate that you'd touch something. What would be the result of that? I looked up Langmuir probes. They're not cheap, even used. So could maybe even Tesla coils be used? They're geometric portals in their own right. Love to hear from Buddy. He's been quiet, throwing out the word tunnels as much as possible. So be interested to get his reactions to the discussion. Or Rick. I saw you join Rick. I saw you join Nick. Rick, you got any reactions to this? Or Buddy? Sure,
Well,
whoever.
I came in late, so I'm just listening at the moment. But
Oh, I see.
Can I provide real quick just a 2-second opinion on what I have about it?
Yeah, however long you want.
Yeah, so as you see, I think I sent a link there in the chat. There's, the Arc de Triomphe in Paris is just the most famous, but they're all over the world, from Moldova, Russia, Germany, all over the world these arcs exist. And
Right.
if you are not harnessing energy, but directing the flow of energy, such as like I sent in the chat, the plasma balls that we all grew up with in high school, you stick your hand on it and the energy goes towards your hand because it's having that connectivity. Well, what we're experiencing right now is through the change in either the ionosphere or the swapping of the heavens, whatever the situation is that results, I don't know, but that harnessing of the energy in that fashion, or the electromagnetic charge, or the plasma, whatever you want to call it, charge, the etheric charge of the earth, is not being directed to those nodes any further. So what you end up having is, like in the plasma ball that you see there right now, that the charge is just going all over the place and finding different locations and different connectivity points, such as Aaron's closet, such as your friend Catherine's, locations you were talking about a second there, such as my friend's house. You see these different locations where these portals are now located, but they're much smaller in size and I guess dimensionality and et cetera. I mean, you could see it there in the picture of the plasma ball concept that I sent. When there's nothing pulling that energy or directing that energy or creating some form of a connectivity, such as what we see with either the Arc de Triomphe, the Star Forts, and the combination of the cathedrals, all three, then it runs basically just on its own based upon whatever is guiding the etheric force. So basically, in a summarization, I guess, could it be, hypothetically, that what is taking place with these, CERN and all these different individuals are utilizing, or is it stadiums now that we use? I don't know, but what is being utilized, because it'd be 5G towers for all we know. What is being utilized now to direct and kind of monitor or harness that etheric field energy that is, more than likely, obviously, from these arcs, what was utilized in the past to guide it to a certain location. That's what I feel it is that,
Do you think it's a
these arcs
setup like in World of Warcraft, the wizard who is assigned to protect Azeroth betrays them and contacts an orc who has a dark magic called the Fel. And then he invites them from the other side, and they make a portal, and they cross it and invade Azeroth because their world is dying because of the orc who's using the Fel. So it's like a cyclic behavior. And it turns out that what has happened is the wizard, through his, tampering with interdimensional travel, he's been infected by a demon. The demon makes its appearance late, but has nearly succeeded until at the last moment. And Khadgar, he rescues them. And the institution that Khadgar had gone to, he'd left because he was disgusted with their inability to like foresee anything, and they were just trapped in the old past. He does end up contacting them, but the Kirin Tor don't do anything to help. He ends up being the one, and he's like, so now what? And they say, I don't know. It's never done that before. Like they're not even really thought things through to see what would be the next stage of things, and they're totally caught with their pants down. And if he hadn't gone looking for the problem and suspecting the main head guy, then basically they'd all be taken over by the Fel. The orcs still make it through, but at least they're now hedged against it. And I keep coming back to the fact that without an electrical connection via light, if somebody plans to kill you and you have zero in knowledge that it's going to happen, there's a good chance that they will succeed without your ability to even stop them. Now, we don't know. There might be some angelic forces protecting you, etc. But we just haven't really. Nobody's gone to this level. I think this think tank is the first place I've heard anybody going to this level. So, kudos. I don't know, but it's important work. I think what we're talking about. Buddy, did you want to chime in?
Too. I don't know. As far as the geometry is concerned, though, that's the key. I don't know. What are we looking for here in terms of geometric? Because take Buddy's, the Dougherty set there, and how does that apply to what we've just discussed here in any way? It's like it's hard to determine.
Well, I think it applies if these are geometric tunnels.
This is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but I have the main entry point to my water comes in right behind that closet. And of the 3 walls and everything that it could have been to, or 4 if you include the outside wall, there's only one that like the water actually goes up and goes towards that wall, so it's like already been directed. But I'm not saying water specifically, but fluoride is a mineral like that we've been adding to water for a long time, and so it's quite possible that there was other motives to putting fluoride in the water other than people's teeth or making a complacent population or something like that. Like, because there's examples of people taking large crystals, like large sculptures and crystals and stuff like that, and shipping them all over the place. I think one of them went to, I think like New York or something, just a huge crystal, and they made a big monument out of it, and it's like, thank you, maybe. I don't exactly know what you're trying to do, like how you're trying to influence the different electrodynamics, but just throwing that out there.
I could see that. I could see the importance behind it. I mean, I don't know.
Well, crystals pulse, don't they? They put their form of capacitor. They're a form of capacitor, aren't they? And they pulse after a certain amount of charge.
Right.
I think.
The question I've always had, though, Nicholas, was: is it a result? Is crystals pulsing like that? Is that a result of them being exposed to the human? Could that, because they represent the the hexagonal structure, the lattice type stacking in their organic makeup, is the pulsing that we recognize from that based upon is it a causality of being in proximity to a human, or is it something that exists?
Well, it's certainly stimulated by pressure, because you get piezoelectricity through crystals, and also by electricity. Light, and of course, depending on the geometry of these crystals as they cut, you get these repeating waves set up inside them that kind of theoretically a photon could beam around in that for quite a number of, a lot of reflections, millions and millions of reflections before it emits out the other side. And so there are a lot of phenomena in crystals that just and they probably are, again, geometric phenomena, but there's probably lots of things that we can do with crystals that we haven't actually with different shaped crystals.
Yeah, I'd like to know how much humans have an effect on them. That'd be interesting to know.
Well, maybe
versa,
at some level there's an auric effect as well. There seem to be a lot of people seem to feel auric effects from, for example, jewelry, diamond jewelry. These precious stones. Not only are they very, very striking to the eye, but they seem to have, they interact.
Yeah, and that gets into birthstones and things like that. Stuff.
Well, yeah, they interact with the field, with the aura somehow, and I don't know how. Maybe they amplify it. I don't know how. But that's not my. I'm sure. It's an area of study. Again, you see, it's all geometries. It's total. Right. It's reflection. So a lot of these cut diamonds. The geometries of those are worth looking at. Some of them. Seeing what they kind of reveal. That if you were to model a light beam bouncing around inside of the, model the light beams hitting it, which we can do with ray tracing. What are the actual 3D interactions of the light as it's passed through the crystal? I don't know. Do you know anything about crystals, Ted?
Not really.
Ted.
Not really. It's way outside my area of expertise.
Yeah, these cuts are done. Of course, I think they maximise the surface area of the crystal, but of course they've still got to have a geometric, shape to it, very highly accurate shape to it.
I think a lot of different things about what we're talking about. First off, I like rough cut stones and rough crystals, not cut at all. I don't like the energy that happens or the look that it changes to when the crystals are cut. I like them before they're cut in their raw form, and that's just me. I think that there's more power in it, the way that they naturally grow, than the artificial shapes that we give to them. I have no idea.
I agree 100% on that, with exception of spheres. Like the sphere, to where it's rolled into that perfect sphere shape, that has more appeal. But I still do prefer the rough cut, so it's nice to hear someone confirming that as well.
I'll just tell you,
I got a good guy in Turkey if you guys want some. I got a good
contact in Turkey
that trades them.
I don't have that particular prejudice. There is, however, a warning among the Taoists that synthetic stones are not to be used with your body's energetics. So, and I've confirmed that personally with a synthetic topaz. It was really bad. But basically, they'd look at it just like you would look at herbs. The more refined the herb, the more side effects it could have, but the more powerful it is in a certain direction. So if you hone the stone, it's going to be honed in a certain direction. It's going to lose some of its abilities in other directions. So if you want a well-rounded stone, take it natural. If you want a more potent stone, take it cut.
Quick
question. What are you guys doing with these these crystals? That would affect human health.
Smoking them.
What's your question?
What are you guys doing with these crystals that they would affect human health?
Yeah. Well, you missed the beginning of the talk. We were talking about a scientific approach to discovering portals that might be being opened up and affecting human consciousness in general in our society. So it has to do with some of the things that are happening in our world right now. Concerns that we have, and obviously they've been used for healing and spiritual acts for a long time. The holies they would walk in and wear a vest of stones. So that's not new.
Okay. Look, there's one thing that you may or may not be aware of, which is the question of whether, like in ancient times, some of these hard stone items that you see had been carved or poured, right? There's a number of people believe that, that the ancient Egyptians at least had the ability to liquefy hard stone and pour it and cast it. In other words, there's no reasonable way to believe that they were able to cut diorite and some of these other things that you see cut, with bronze or brass tools.
No, well, they didn't use bronze, but we've already found ruthenium alloy in the so-called boat pits. Those boat pits weren't boat pits; they were giant saws.
I'm sorry, run that by me again.
So, do you know who Chris Dunn is?
No.
Okay, Chris Dunn wrote the Giza power plant and ancient technologies or lost technology of ancient Egypt. He's an engineer. He works with stones. He works with stone engineers and masons. And he and another engineer who works at Rolls-Royce, they go routinely over there, and they have found ruthenium alloy, which is used in turbines in airplanes. They found ruthenium alloy dust in the boat pits, which are not boat pits, and you can see that they were giant wheel beds, and there's a central access point. Which
let me ask you a really stupid question. What exactly is a boat pit? I'm sorry.
Well, they're not really boat pits, but I'll show you. I'll post a picture in the.
I know what boats are. And I know what pits are, right? But
yeah, well, that's the thing, is that their theory is that these were the mooring places for boats to show up. It's pretty hilarious, actually, because you can see in the middle of the so-called boat pit is a place where an axis rested. Hold on a second. Orthogonal picture.
Okay.
So
in the case of
going to Aaron.
I say in the case of the main pyramid blocks, those almost have to have been poured and not carved.
The big ones, you mean? Yeah.
The blocks they use, where you have millions of these blocks going into one pyramid, those have to have been poured. In other words,
there's a way to move. There's a way to move those with just trigonometry, but the big ones underneath that formed what might have been a ziggurat from a previous culture. Those, I presume that they did shape them in some manner, as you're talking about.
So in cases of column stones, where you only need 4 or 5 of them or something like that, then yeah, you could carve those, right? But when you need millions of these blocks to make a pyramid, you can't carve those. It's like, the pyramid,
you can't even industrialize it.
The quarry would become unworkable and useless within a few days or a few weeks. It's like you would produce more rubble. You would produce more rubble than you would blocks, right? And the whole enterprise.
I see what you're getting at. Well, but there's some excellent evidence of cutting stones pretty precise. You've seen this stone that's been split in half, right? You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, hold on a second. Find that one too.
It's the one in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
Yeah. So real quick, Aaron, while he's doing that, I just wanted to bring up, so basically growing a crystal utilizing magnesium sulfate is the same concept as having a crystal form naturally. So it's really talking about what Ramon was saying when it comes to the terms of synthetic stones. But when you grow a crystal, let's assume for a second I just want to hypothetically put the Emoto water tests into the same kind of concept as what we're talking here. But if you're taking just, basic, very highly charged, energetically in a positive way, water, and then you grow the crystal and roll it and create this circular crystal through, utilizing individuals with, very strong energetic chi, all very empathetic, all very positively, just good people, and they're singing songs, maybe like in a monastery or even any kind of just gathering of individuals of a tribe or what have you. But they all are there for the sake of love and understanding. And then as they grow this crystal, through time and then form it into the circle, Ramon, I guess the question is really directed more to you. Would that not have positive, do you think, more of a positive effect? I know the Taoists were against synthetic crystals, but did they understand the power of human influence over the structures of water, which would then result in the
Probably
structure
not.
of crystals as
I
they
would
form?
I would assume that there's a lot of superstition and pure belief. You have to realize there's a good chance the Wudong Mountain is a cathode from a giant strike. They did, however, have the ability to build a structure made of copper. It is not clear that that structure was purposely designed to create ball lightning, but that's what it does. Several times a year, it generates spontaneous ball lightning, and it's likely a cathode. The paper I'm working on now, I do believe that I described the Daniel Boone ley line as a cathode. There is a lot of ball lightning that comes out of. I have a person whose property, he sent me photos. They produce massive ball lightning coming out of the ground on this property. And it's in the Daniel Boone National Forest on that ley line, where we have such good electrogeology evidence. So it's not clear that the Taoists knew they were doing that, but they did understand that the mountain was the home of the thunder god, Xuanwu, which is just another name for Junwu or Leigong. And now, they did some weird alchemy, and I will describe one alchemy. This is a reliable alchemist. He was climbing the mountains there, and he started hearing this gong ring. And he kept thinking that he would walk around the corner and he would hear it. And he hiked another couple miles, and the tone never changed in its level. It was the same tone and the same pitch. And he came across this gong this guy was playing, and he started talking to him about it in Mandarin. And the guy explained that it had been made in an age so long ago that they forgot how it was made. It was some kind of rolled copper, alloy combination. But the shape of it produced this resonant sound that something like a wolf's howl. It had these special resonant properties that could go throughout the entire complex. So I doubt that they ever had some kind of Vatican level, Rosicrucian, Illuminati level of research going. But who knows what kinds of things in those 1,000 buildings on Wudong Mountain that they had explored. I would presume that they had tried making crystals or shaping crystals or doing something with crystals and discovered something. But a lot of it's superstition, guys. I mean, the thing is that they routinely make contact with all sorts of kinds of entities that maybe they should or shouldn't. Things that, are warned about, warned against, and they do it for selfish reasons. They want money, power, sex, usually power. More power, especially political power, but also the power to hurt to take revenge on your enemies. So, how much of their science can be directly converted? I think we might have to start from scratch and start working it from the bottom up.
I bet you $1 to a donut, if you were to grow a crystal inside of a room out of the same material, grow two separate crystals out of the same material, utilizing very, very same energy from the same individuals, you could then take those two Palantirs, is that what they were in the Lord of the Rings?
Palantirs. So I have
Palantirs.
Yeah.
So if you were to do that inside of a room, the individual under good intentions, good intent, and then take and grow the crystal over time together, and then take them to two separate locations, I bet you $1 to a donut, you could more than likely have a high level of communication between those two individuals.
It's possible. What I recommend to people is if they want a Palantir right now, the closest thing that you can do is buy large spheres of labradorite. But, the ability to actually talk to another person, not so much. But the ability to talk into the ether is pretty strong. Labradorite is really interesting stuff.
What I'm saying is directing the control, directing the controls.
Light, don't we? We use rubies to cohere light in laser beams. So
that's a good point.
So these effects have been understood, a lot of them, that I suppose we need to know more about. I suppose Robert knows quite a lot about laser beams, doesn't he?
Well, I think crystals being grown utilizing magnesium sulfate's a very, very important thing to understand, because manganese is what really is one of the main things that has been found as a result of the transmutation process inside of the sapphire chamber. So if we're looking at it from that magnesium concept, the structural makeup of magnesium might be an important key here. I don't know what, but it might be an important key in some
Well,
aspect.
it's the light wave that it produces, and then it produces a frequency that somehow it can cohere, so some the photons. I think they're all in phase. I think that's what coherence is. I'm not sure about that, to be honest. Could do with we need Jonathan on this one. Or do you know anything about this, Aaron?
Well, it's the go ahead. It's the magnesium, the silicon, and the oxygen combination. So it's that secret combination sauce there that I think might be important as a chemical compound. And I hear you when you're saying about light being involved, but I think that, yeah, I don't know. I'm still thinking about it as we speak, to be honest.
While you're thinking about it, I got some exciting news. We're going to be growing silicon monocrystalline rods, and we will get to play with all types of frequency permutations and everything while we're growing these rods to increase and the structures and decrease different inclusions and things like that. So it's there's definitely going to be time to play with a lot of these different aspects.
Wow, yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah.
So, Nicholas, what was the root of your question again, man? I'm sorry. You were asking more directly related to light structure through the crystal, right?
Yeah. Well, what I was saying that these reflections can be set up, internal reflections inside a crystal, and I suppose these, when you set those up fractally, you can suppose you could transmit those, amplify them or concentrate them. Now, how this works, I have no idea, of course, but I have a feeling that the information is stored in them somehow.
Well, here's the question: why suddenly did here's what happened? Molly said the word optimistic, and boom, I was told to write a paper called The Optimistic about Isaac Newton, and now we're talking about this stuff. So, what is the direction that all of this is? Why now? Like, why are we being jilted in this direction? I don't know. Is it just Halloween? Maybe so.
I think there's a difference. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ramon. My bad.
You didn't interrupt me.
Yeah. So I think there's a difference, Nicholas, between the concept of aggregation and refraction and reflection. So if we have aggregation occurring inside of an organic substance, such as what is a crystal, could it not be that it is emanating its actual own light? As I think Teddy was pointing out a minute ago, or was it you, that once a photon enters a crystal, it could sit there and bounce around forever. Well, could it not be that it's being absorbed in a sense inside of that structure, and then the crystal itself emanates the light that we receive or understand to be actually reflection or refraction, but it's really aggregation that's occurring?
Well, possibly. I mean, but of course we don't understand time as well. There's a possibility
Damn
that
it, man! Why you got to throw time into the mix? Shit, we were just doing good. We were just getting down the road.
Yeah,
that's a good point, though.
Well,
time's the hard one to understand.
maybe that. Yeah, maybe it's circular. Maybe it's fractal. We just, it's one of these. It's one of these. We know it's kind of related to gravity now. But of course, when we look at these different structures that emanate from, for example, the Metatron cube, which is just about every structure you can make from that basis, almost. It seems like as you go, the complexity increases from a circle. The complexity of the shapes increase until you form a perfect sphere again, or circle, or it looks like a sphere. It looks like a kind of chopped up sphere. That's what happens when you just obviously carry on increasing the size of the polygon. So the one is the all. It's all Burton Russell's paradox expressed. Science doesn't seem to be including this in its evaluations, but Russell's paradox states that every member of a superset is a member of itself. I think it is. I'll have to look that up. But if we, this is an irresolvable paradox in set theory, and if you look at that in terms of these geometries, it does resolve, and so the finite becomes infinite and circles back on itself. I mean, is the expression of the distant future, is the distant future an expression of the distant past, or is the distant past an expression of the distant future? And so these ideas do become more circular, and if we can kind of place ourselves in terms of these geometries, I think we'll find we live in a much more ordered universe in terms of how we perceive it. We start seeing the patterns. I think that's the case. And so maybe we're starting to see more patterns. We're starting to link these patterns together, and beyond and understand how they start to formulate. Now, other things that are coming out of Grant's work that I'm enjoying at the moment is he has a numerological approach to for example, that I think he was saying he sees the positive. Oh no, let me think now. Hydrogen is the 6. 0. 1 is the electron. 2 is I think the proton, maybe not the proton. I can't remember anyway. But it goes up through this series of incrementing the dimensions to formulate the these numbers. All have a pole. They're either masculine or feminine. And they all have a relationship with another one. So 2 has a relationship with 5, 4 has a relationship with 7. I mean, they even look kind of similar, don't they? But when you do all this, when you analyze them at mod 24 and all these kind of effects that you can put on them, they kind of reciprocate when you do mathematical operations on them. And so there are all these properties of numbers that kind of repeat on various scales through everything we can see. And so just like Kepler did with his astronomy, which is totally accurate, by the way. If you look at things in terms of these waveforms, it works. It all works. And I think we've got to start looking at things in terms of not only Bessel functions, but in terms of what's it called? Where you chop up a million waveforms and Oh, sorry, I can't remember the mathematical analysis, but it's a matter of chopping waveforms up into discrete amounts, basically. So you can derive all sorts of shapes by just using a number of repeating waveforms, and it's used in, well, good God, my memory. I'll have to quit the weed. But anyway, so there are these analyses that we can do on these waveforms, and we'll find that just about, as Buddy's finding out with the Dougherty set, these repeating these phenomena pop out from them, and so we've got to find out how these, more of these phenomena relate, and especially in the field of light and electromagnetics. But it's all totally related. I mean, I think even the periodic table adheres to these waveforms, to these geometries.
Don't you think, though, I mean, if we only approach it with light, I think we're going to struggle. But if we use the electrogeometeorology, we're going to get some guidance from nature, is my suspicion.
Yeah.
What do you think of that idea?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think we are getting a lot of guidance when we look at geology on a macro scale. It's like we can see things happening on the other planets that we can't really see on our own from where we're looking anyway. But on a smaller scale, we don't seem to know where these currents exist, which run through the Earth's surface, and there are obviously rivers of it running around in certain places. But it seems to be where these currents overlap that you get all the aberrant behaviour and the lightning strikes. They say that's where the bad feng shui is, where the currents actually cross. You need to be on one or the other, or you're getting your feng shui mixed up. You're in a vortex of it. So these dowsers can feel this, can't they? It's where water paths cross each other. Even,
well, the question is, are they feeling it, or are they seeing it with their mind, and then that's translating into excitement into their fingers? There's not enough study to know the difference, because it could be that their mind is tied directly to the etheric strata, and it might be that they could know the layout of all that stuff before they wake up and leave to go Dow's that day. Their soul might already have the information.
well,
it's incredibly difficult to know for sure.
I've seen it in action from people who are complete atheists, and they've done it to find plumbing pipes. But they've actually been able to sense the magnetic field change.
I think that one of the few metaphysical sciences that we could actually do a double-blind placebo on, and probably should. Be interesting to know what actually they are experiencing.
I think that would be a really good experiment to set up, wouldn't it? With maybe you could do it with some buried pipes, of water, and just see. It's a simple test we can all do, really. It's got to be flowing water, I expect. So
I would expect that as well.
You could do it with a coil of pipe, maybe, so you can get a crossover in it, and just see what the effects are. As get people who visit your house to give them a set of dowsing rods and see what happens. Make them walk across the lawn, and I'll set one up myself, in fact, because I'm still looking for the field drains up there. I might have a walk up there this afternoon with my dowsing rods. See if I can get anything.
Guys, I was looking for more how aggregation turns on the light. So I found the study done by the National Science Review about an individual back in 2020 was basically doing some work and, was writing some stuff about the what aggregation really truly is. And he gave a quick explanation, or not a quick explanation, but talked about the field might be considered, hold on. So basically, it might be an ability for properties to go on and off, and for some kind of odd way, reduce the radioactive decay of the particular material. So therefore, by kind of the redshift versus blue shift type concept, it swapped over and provided a light emitting kind of or a photon emitting effect. Anyway, that's part. And I'm absolutely getting that all wrong, but this in the study here, so I'm just really kind of quickly summarizing it. But anyway, but that led me next to trying to figure out what the hell a silol excitation is, and I was reading on that and came across this study real quick that says the design of fused bithylophene systems containing silol and 5-membered heterocycles for optoelectronic materials. Man, and just by perusing that real quick, you get into some really fun information just right off the bat based on the fused ring bithylophenes, which is what they're utilizing to basically conduct this study. But then that led me to laterally fluorinated liquid crystals containing a 2-2 matrix of bithylophene moiety, M-O-I-E-T-Y. I'm not sure how to pronounce that word. Man, I'm telling you, this stuff is all interrelated, and I think the truth is that a lot of studies have already been done on a lot of this stuff. So the fluorinated portion speaks straight to what Aaron was talking about a second ago, and I think that there's some validity to what his hypothesis there about fluorine being added to the water for a different reason than just getting rid of it because we had too much of it when we started making fertilizer or whatever the hell their excuse was. So yeah, I think there's something to it, and it has a lot to do with the fact that we've got, crystalline structures in our brain, plus, water being a healing modality for the humanity as a peer. It's like that's what you need to survive. So I can go without food for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, hell, a month, but you can't really go 3 days without water. So I don't know. I think there's something to this. I provided the studies in the chat there, man. I'm going to read on it more, but I think it's freaking exciting.
Well, that's all of these things are exciting. How to step forward. That's what separates the men from the boys on all this stuff. There's so many people have been thinking about things like this for thousands of years, but actually doing it. I mean, it's sort of like I want to find the electrical secrets to turn stone into putty, but we need certain conditions.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you need funding. You need to get the POSs out of the whole entire scientific process. We've had these discussions. You got to get these POSs away from the whole concept of everything. Otherwise, we're just sitting here taking a shit.
That's not the direction I was going with it, but you're not wrong. My direction is going that we need an unlimited supply of energy to where we can adjust the current, the impedances, use different kind of capacitance, maybe combined with radio frequencies. And that's all the more reason to have an R&D center underneath of in the Lawton mine, because then we will be away from spying eyes. We'll have controlled conditions, clean room capability, all of these things that we need, and plus generate our own electricity on the surface and below in the mine. And I mean, who knows what kind of things that we'd be able to find inside that lab. Of course, it's got to be sealed off from the fab. But there's so much that can be done once we have that, or even just having our STEM arenas that built. We have the STEM arenas, then we got all these kids, and they're doing the research. Who knows what? Some kid might accidentally study how to turn crystal into putty. I mean, you just never know. Kids do discover things. It's kind of crazy when that happens, but it does happen.
I hear you, partner. I just think that a lot of it depends on resources, and right now all the resources are tied up in the POS's world.
No, so yeah, not all. A lot.
Well, the majority. I hear you. I hear you. Not all. Not all. Not all. I apologize for generalization.
The BlackRock came up
it just
last
is.
night in the citation, you know, and it's totally true. I'm already forgetting what Messy 27 was. Oh yeah, the 4 domains to win World War 3.0. So BlackRock did come up, but I don't think that they can suck up all the. As soon as they start to, I think that they'll be overthrown. If they really tried to achieve what they think that they could achieve, I think that they'll get special opt by China. In all honesty, but that's just how I think. So, where do we want to go from here? I mean, it's Halloween. We're talking pretty interesting stuff. What do you guys say? You think that's an accident, or you think that we're touching into something and it's causing little sparks to fly in our brains? Because the witches maintain that the portals are more open this time of year, and especially on this day.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
I'm sure they absolutely
What
are.
do you consider portals to be open to? Right. I mean,
That's
what?
the question. We don't know. That's the issue. Is that when we started talking about it, the main concern is, strategically, that we're using electricity and radio waves and cellular and all this stuff, and busy advertising to hyperdimensional beings. Hey, we're here. Just tunnel in, and your spirits can supersede those of our children, and people will stop being human. That's a lot of what we're seeing. People just seem to be less human than they used to be. But the other concern is just generally speaking, tunnels of the underworld, tunnels of the other world, tunnels of well, of course, people would love. They think they would love to have tunnels to heaven, but you got.
It sounds like sooner or later you're going to get to this question of what I call the antediluvian communication system when you start talking about this kind of stuff.
Maybe you can.
There are a couple of questions about that.
I wasn't finished saying what I was saying, which is that just because the angels are there, then there's a lot of things you cannot do when angels are watching you. It's not necessarily always a wise thing to go inviting angels, hanging out with you while you're busy doing stuff you shouldn't be doing. So we don't know the physics of it. We don't have any good data. We have a lot of metaphysical data. We have a lot of anecdotal data. But we haven't systematically stepped through with an EPMC style method up until this century, honestly. And now there's all these shows, but how many of them are scams versus how many of them are actually recording for the purposes of getting data? Don't know.
Okay, like I say, you've got that video that Greg J and I did, which is about the antediluvian communication system. And there are bits and pieces of real data to work with. I mean, it's not all conjecture. You've got Rupert Sheldrake and Dean Radin and their experiments, right, which is nearly as I can tell amount to, demonstrations that things that we've gotten used to calling paranormal are real, that can be shown to a statistical certainty. Now, you've got the question of Julian Jaynes and the question of how the human brain worked 4,000 years ago versus the way it works now. This right side analog to the speech center, which appears to be like a sort of a neurophysiological equivalent of the Wi-Fi dongle, like on a computer. It's like a communication system. At any rate, it doesn't serve any useful purpose now. It was like, Jane said that, like, what these neurophysiologists, at Princeton had shown him was that, when this right side analog to the speech center is stimulated with electrical probes, most of the time, people claim to be hearing voices as real, as any spoken human voice, right? It's like so that you've got essentially the elements of an antediluvian communication system. You can demonstrate just by following the whole question of the history of human spoken languages, and the fact that you don't have super families of languages. There's no believable evidence for anything like Nostratic. Okay, indicates to me that, like, if the story of the Tower of Babel didn't exist, we would have to invent it, right? So, I mean, you've got all this stuff sitting there. All this stuff is real. It's not imaginary. Okay, so, the question is, what was reality like when you had communications, not only with humans standing next to you, but with humans like 5 miles away or 10,000 miles away, or with other kinds of animals, or with, like the story of the woman and the snake, or the story of Balaam with his donkey, right? Or with pure spirits, right? I mean, you've got things like the Ark of the Covenant, which essentially was a radio device for communicating with the spirit world, right? You've got the numerous descriptions, like in the Old Testament, of the Jewish leaders hearing the voice of God when this thing would light up. In other words, they describe Yahweh as living between the cherubim of the ark, right? And I mean, what do you see between the two contact points of a capacitor, right? You see an electrical arc. You've got the story of the one guy trying to catch the ark, keep it from falling off of a wagon once and getting electrocuted, right? Anyways, you've got all this stuff. I've heard people mention photons several times here today. It's like, and the question is, do you regard that as certain knowledge, or as a photon just the best we can do as of right now, as opposed to, what we might be able to do 100 years?
To be honest, we've already done that episode. I would, go and review that. Robert and I argued for probably 2 weeks. So we came to
whether there was such a thing as a photon.
We all pretty much agreed that it wasn't real particles, but you can certainly use particles to try and approximate. So if you want to go and read that, probably
the mathematics of it works for solving real world problems, right? But is it real, right? It's like, you see, it's like I think I run this idea of mine.
We already covered that pretty thoroughly. I would just go and review that episode, and that'll answer that one.
Have I gone over my idea of what I call the redneck theory of light with you guys?
No, but that does sound fascinating. Why don't you tell us what does a redneck theory of light mean? What does that mean?
Gunfire, rifle fire, right?
It's racist, in other words, by the way. Just want to say that before we get started here. It's racist.
Well, yeah, it's meant to be, but it's like, I could just as easily call it the machine gun analogy, right? Or the gunfire analogy. When you have evidence of both waves and particles in one place, right? Well, the simplest deduction you could draw is that, like, both waves and particles must be there, right? Well, I mean, that's simple, but it's how people have a hard time with that, right? It's like, the analogy I give is this question of, like, Teddy Roosevelt out on the Serengeti, like with, getting ready for a safari, right? He's got a new rifle, he's got, like, new guides, and he sees, like, in one area where he sees some lion dung, lying on the ground, and then 40 feet away, you've got some elephant dung, right? And he calls one of the new guides over. He says, take a look at this and see what you think, right? What do you make of this? And there's one correct answer. The answer is, well, Bwana, it looks as if, some lions have been by here and some elephants have been by here also, right? That's the right answer. And the guy keeps his job, right? The answer that Teddy Roosevelt doesn't want to hear is going to be more like, well, Bwana, it looks to me as if some magical animal with properties of both elephants and lions has been by here, right? That doesn't work. Okay? So when you look at waves and particles, it's the same thing, right? It's like when you see evidence of, like this wave-particle duality they talk about, with light. It's the same thing. It's like, when you've got evidence of both waves and particles, then the simplest, most obvious conclusion you should draw is that both waves and particles are present, right? Now, what does that mean exactly? And I get back to this Ralph Sansbury, who died like about 6 or 8 years ago. Okay, and the demonstration that I've got this question of currents going through wires creating electrostatic fields, which reverse when the current is reversed, right? What does that mean? Well, the answer is, it means that electrons are not point particles. In real life, anything which is real takes up space, right? It might be some terribly tiny amount of space, but it really means that electrons are not point particles. They're small orbital systems, incredibly tiny orbital systems of their own, right, which consist of at least one central particle and at least one orbiting particle, the charges of which sum to the charge of an electron. Okay, now, what Ralph Sansbury had noticed is it's terribly elegant, and it's not looking for some back of the book type answer, right? It's like, it's terribly elegant. He said that like when an electron is at rest, it is basically spherical. That doesn't represent any kind of a dipole, right? Nonetheless, like when you have some kind of force acting on an electron, which could be like a voltage drop across a wire, right? Then that's going to pull this electron into an ellipsoid. And when you pull all of the electrons in that wire into ellipsoids, then you're going to get a polarized dipole effect, right? Then see, the ellipsoid electron is going to represent a dipole, okay? And when you align all of the, which a current will do, it'll align all the dipoles like that in the wire the same way, well then that's going to create an electrostatic field. It's terribly tiny, right? But it is measurable. And of course, when you reverse the current, it's going to reverse the field, right? Now, Ralph Sansbury did the computations, to establish the computed necessary velocity of he calls these like subtrons, a sub-electron particle. He said the computed necessary velocity of a sub-electron particle would get you from here to Andromeda in a second or two. That's the kind of speed that you're talking about. You're talking about something that blows the doors straight off of this thing we call the speed of light, it's like from here to the moon in 1 second, right? That same 1 second would get the sub-electron particle from here to Andromeda. So, that tells us a number of things, right? That tells me that, you see, Ralph Sansbury also believed that light, judging from other experiments, that light amounted to an instantaneous force of some sort. I don't quite buy that. I don't picture any, we do see light coming from distant galaxies, right? And I don't picture any kind of a force having any effect across that kind of a distance, right? And I don't see, no matter how much of a neutron, of a neutrino soup there might be through space, I don't see any kind of a wave making it from a distant galaxy from a distant galaxy to Earth. I'll tell you what I can picture very easily. I can picture an energetic process like a fire or any sort of a plasma physics type of a process, like these central bodies in our galaxy. I could picture something like that, throwing off these sub-electron particles into streams, right? And I can picture these streams, this would be the machine gun analogy, right? I can picture these streams of sub-electron particles making it across cosmic distances in a very short period of time. I mean, without taking untold ages to do that, right? And then generating waves that we see, bow waves essentially, when it gets here into our own local environment, which certainly amounts to a neutrino soup, the way Walt Thornhill describes. Then you've got your waves and you've got your particles and you've got your, you've got your good explanation that Theodore Roosevelt would be happy with. You understand what I'm saying? And it's like, we do see, waves coming from light waves, coming from other points, right, within our own system. So that's the other version of it, right? That's the version of it that says you probably don't need anything like a proton, or like a photon. I'm sorry, like a photon, and that's what I would call the redneck theory of light. There's other things that Ralph Sainsbury's theories explain, right? They explain. You see, you could also get some kind of force acting on electrons and causing them to assume a spherical shape, right? I mean, the ordinary spin forces that you get, which would make gravity into a kind of a polarized, it's another kind of a polarized electrostatic dipole effect, right? That would make gravity a kind of a second or third cousin to gyroscopic force, or the forces that create sinkers and sliders in baseball, right? Ralph Sainsbury had done another, not Sainsbury, I'm sorry, yeah. So he had done another experiment involving a lot like Pockle cells and lasers, which he claimed indicated, that light was an instantaneous force, although it could easily be what he was seeing really was, the waves taking a certain period of time to get from one side of a room to another, whereas the stream of subtrons would be essentially instantaneous. But that's the redneck theory of light.
If I could comment on that a little bit and bring it back to what we were talking about earlier. If the self-organization and transportation of matter occurs in Birkeland currents, does the self-organization of spirits and entities use the same pathways? So do
As above, so below.
And
okay,
then
the Birkeland current is basically, I mean, you're talking about things that travel at sea, right? I mean, you're not talking about anything that's going to get you to Andromeda in a couple of seconds. Like,
yeah, Birkeland currents. There's a speed to them, and apparently they can get up to faster than the speed of light.
okay, I'd never heard that.
I don't know about that, but I do think that it's very unlikely that we'll be using Birkeland currents to travel between galaxies, if that's your question, Teddy.
Can we,
No.
real quick,
I think we're gonna
can we have a discussion?
tunneling. I think we're going to be tunneling data through the counter space.
Yeah.
Can we stick on this topic, but real quick discuss the difference between aggregation and refraction and reflection? Because I think those are three different things.
You can do whatever you like, man.
And
Go ahead.
But I'm saying if there's three different things that are taking place, and we're using all three of them to describe what we're observing as light, how come Buddy can't be right and Teddy be right in the situation, in the sense that we're just trying to describe something we don't know in one way, when in reality there just might be other ways to describe it.
Yep, very well could be, man. I have no doubt that we look like a bunch of backwards, white trash hillbilly rednecks to the aliens of the universe. So, we're probably not that impressive.
Okay. There's another thing. Look,
as far as last night goes, Devil's Night, I've never ever heard someone walking in my house late at night. Ever. I've never heard footsteps. I've never heard creaking of my boards. Last night, it literally sounded exactly like someone was walking in my house, to the point where I was fear struck at first, where you get frozen. You get frozen solid. And I was staring at my phone, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I literally kept hearing it like sneak, like someone was sneaking slowly, and the boards were creaking. So I loaded
I really, honest to God, had a kind of not the same exact experience, but something very, very close to that last night too.
So I had my shotgun already loaded, and I turned on the lights, and I I said, "Locked and loaded, bitch! I already called the cops." You know, and just started screaming and saying, "Cops are on their way." And then I fucking got up and loaded my pistol and started walking around, because it's a lot easier to walk around with that versus even if it's a sawed-off shotgun, like the smaller one that I have is. It's just easier to walk around with your pistol. So I walked around, nothing, absolutely nothing. Never heard that before in my life. It was just so weird, man. I'm like, I thought 100% that someone was in my house.
Yeah. No, you scared him away. It's obvious.
Man.
Right. Look, there's another thing that I should run by you. It's like when you start talking about like the possibility of information getting from here to Andromeda in 1 or 2 seconds, right? Well, that tells you that the main basis that you have for all these billion-year time frames, you know, that you read is, I mean, that's probably not believable. You know, in other words, it looks more as if, you know, light coming to us from distant galaxies isn't really telling us anything about how long, you know, like how far away that galaxy is or how long it's taken that light to travel and get here.
I think that's because and this is just my personal opinion, Teddy, that what we've been led to understand space as a physical place that you can drive a car to, or a physical location, is not what it is. It's a dimensionality, and it's a representation of a dimensionality. So it's a dimensional type concept. It has nothing to do with me being able to drive from here to Texas. It's more along the lines of the dimensionality of it all, and it's being represented by the heavens above us and through the things we see optically in the skies. But space is a dimension. It's not an actual physical location. And as soon as if you're willing to accept that premise, then all of the distance problems that you have fly out the window.
Do you have any sort of a thought about, like, you know, infinity, right? I mean, the question of how big the universe is there a limit to the visible, to the universe? Is it expanding and it just keeps on expanding, or what?
I think it's Buddy's done it best with this
expanding?
representation of the Dougherty set. I think it's a fractal repeating dimensionality. It gets to a certain point when it exceeds the limitations of the creator's design, and then it loops back around on itself.
Right.
Okay.
It's infinite set is contained within a finite creation, but that finite creation is racked with eternal fractility. So there's no, just like if you just use the original Mandelbrot as an example, the Mandelbrot is very well defined, but it's also completely infinite. There's no end to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it repeats, but also different parts of it look succinct, and it's continuous in that way. But there's no arbitrariness to the cosmic rearrangement hypothesis. We don't have an expansion here, and it's just rearranging. And over here it looks like it's expanding. Over here it looks like it's contracting. It's just rearrangement.
Okay. Let me ask you another question. When you talk about human origins, which is my main interest, okay, then you would logically figure that there had to be some, you know, we've got evidence that we've had humans on at least 3 bodies in our own system within the last 100,000 years, like Mars, Ganymede, and Earth, right? Maybe a couple more, maybe 3 or 4 more, right? I don't know, but it's like you would think that somewhere in the universe there would have to be some kind of a place where the first human ever to live lived, right? You know, there would have to be some place and some time where you had a first human. Do you see? Do you have any thoughts along those lines? Or
I don't personally, because it's all speculative.
I mean, does the existence of humans go?
Humans are emergent, so it's not just there's the first human. It's an emergent property, and partial growth through evolution, changing different body shapes and morphisms.
Okay,
It's
I mean, you've got this.
Literally, it's all these spirits in the birkeland currents are becoming real bodies. and we are the spirits of the Birkeland current in body form.
Okay.
I agree with Buddy. Actually, it's and it's an interesting thing to say because he and I have come at this from very different positions and platforms in the initial, and the more we work together, the more we see the same basic solution set when you talk about that kind of thing. But it's all speculation. There's no way of knowing, and I think you got to let it go, Teddy. I really don't think you can know.
Yeah, that's one that bothers me. Okay, it's like, you've got two narratives as to humans on Earth, right? You've got the narrative that says, that Adam and Eve were the first two people on Earth, or at least the first two people of that particular human saltation on Earth, 5,000-6,000 years ago. And then you've got the other narrative that says that the first people living on Earth were living in Australia, and this is like 50 or 60,000 years ago. And most people would assume that like one of those two narratives has to be wrong. I don't believe that. I believe both these narratives are correct. They're separate but equal. Okay, it's like, you've got this first group of humans that came to Earth, right, 40, 50, 60,000 years ago. And then you've got like, these would be Cro-Magnon people, right, of the people that you had living in Australia that long ago. And then you've got Adam and Eve and the people that you read about in Genesis, basically either created here ex nihilo or brought here somehow or other, like 4, 5, 6,000 years ago. And, that's the main human divide on the planet, right? I mean, it's nothing to do with race, nothing to do with color. Okay, you've got both black and white people who you would call Cro-Magnon descendants, right? And you've got both white and black people that you would call descendants of the people in Genesis, right? Now, if you had like a table sitting at a shopping mall, and sitting at that table were me and a Zulu or a Bantu and then an Australian native, right? An Aboriginal native of Australia. And you ask the first 1,000 people that walked by, like, say, okay, it's like two of the people at this table are more closely related to each other than either of them is to the third person. Which is which, right? Well, I mean, everybody would get that wrong. They would assume that the two dark-skinned people were going to be more closely related to each other than either of them was to me, right? But that's wrong. In other words, the Zulu and I are both descended from Adam and Noah, right? It's like the Australian Aborigine is not. He's descended from Cro-Magnon people. You see what I'm saying? It's like you've got a funny kind of a thing sitting there. And like I say, I don't have all of the answers to that sort of question. It's like one that I'm totally missing is like, where do the Han Chinese come from? I mean, I'd like to hear somebody's theory about that.
Well, white people give birth to black people all the time, and black people give birth to white people.
Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah, it does all the time. So it's like,
what else?
The whole thing about fighting over race is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, how come it's all okay to talk about different races all the time, but never talk about the one race, the human race? It's like, that's banned on all the social sites,
They don't let
my
you talk
take on
about
it,
that.
Teddy, my take on it, Teddy, I think we've been, like the panda bears, like multiple different animals we find on the planet, have been genetically modified through different means or processes from either an extraterrestrial entity or force, or it's from our own people through learned and passed down knowledge. But I think in my mind, and it's just where it's what I've been led to, so it's completely my own view on this, and I think other people share it sometimes, but I think that like you got the Iki and Anil story, you've got all these different stories of tampering with the human DNA, and I think as a species, we just have been tampered with, one being the Han Dynasty, one being, white man, one being black, so I think that the humans themselves originated through the function of life on the planet, and then through that development of life were then combined with some other form of structure by more advanced beings. I don't know which or how. I don't have any clue on that because, again, it's all conjecture. But ultimately, we were tampered with through our DNA. And I don't know why, how, and exactly what, but it's obvious that there's something that is not okay about
Okay, I don't
the
see
path
any.
that humanity's taken.
Yeah. Okay, I don't see any overwhelming evidence of tampering. What I do see is exactly the same thing that you get with Darwin's finches out there in the Galapagos, right? And, basically what appears to me to be the case is that, these different kinds of finches with their different kinds of beaks, I believe that the information for every one of those kinds of finches is present in every finch that ever lived in the world. Okay, so that if conditions change or if some new requirement arises, then you could go from the one kind of finch to the other kind of finch with a different kind of beak, right? And in the case of humans, I think you've got the same thing. I think that the information, it's all driven by information. I think the information for every kind of human that's ever walked the earth is sitting right there in all of us.
Yep.
Right? And all it would take is a slight change.
Yeah, or even in some of us, like I was watching some extreme show or something where people who have weird oddities, growths on their bodies and stuff, this woman had tear ducts above her ear, like right where her ear meets her head.
Yeah.
Little tear ducts, and they actually produced tears. When she cried, she would cry out of her eyes and ears.
Wow.
Now, these adaptations and mutations can happen within one generation. Along this same thread, there was this man who cut his finger off, and I might have even taken a picture of it. I don't know. This man cut his finger off and then had a baby, and his daughter was born with her finger the exact same size with a nail and everything as where he cut his finger off.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So these adaptations and these mutations were a lot more malleable in the plasticity in our DNA to survive a flood, survive a hot sun, 20x solar flare. We in our DNA, we grow this, and it becomes part of the metadata inside of the coils of our DNA.
Right.
So like I believe in 2 to 3 generations we can become totally different creatures, and this is kind of what they're doing right now with COVID and eugenics and the shots and stuff and the synthetic biology. The actually doing large, broad-scale experiments on humankind, and from what I studied about power, silence is the most powerful, one of the most powerful tools. So
silence.
All it takes is us being silent and allowing them to do what they do instead of revolting against it or instead of going against it.
Okay. I think you guys all know better than to have anything to do with the Karen vax, I assume.
Well, why does silence the key there, buddy?
Silence to that's their power, the power of the for lack of a better term, Illuminati. They want us to be silent. That's their power, and we obey. A lot of us just, not all of us, obviously, but we
What are you
as
trying to say?
a human race obeyed, and we did what they asked with no qualms. The shots, the vaccine.
Well, not to give a plug to AIC in this situation, but I think that the key moving forward with humanity as a whole is to reduce all of these devices and pieces of equipment and radio, all these EMF emitting devices, computers, laptops, everything that we currently use, cell phones that we use to emit such a high amount of EMF, and we reduce the size almost down to almost minuscule amount so that it doesn't have an effect on the human body. And we do that through the use of silicon carbide wafers, but at a much smaller, reduced fractional scale than what it is now, to where the devices and items that we utilize in order to support and benefit our lives daily, which we really kind of have come to depend on has gotten to such a small, minute amount of EMF emitting frequency ranges that it has very little to no effect on the human body. And then we can allow for the transition over into more developed creatures based upon the result of not having all of this current interference that we have pulsating through our bodies now on a daily basis. That's just my thought process.
Yeah, yeah. The smog is heavy, but I don't think it's. I mean, it's a problem, but it's not as big as I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you got good points, but we're gonna have to learn to live with it and deal with it and adapt with it and grow with it and have our DNA, melt and mold with it. It is the electromagnetic spectrum. There's good frequencies and bad frequencies.
I just enjoy a tree's frequency much more than I do my phone's. That's my point. And I think that when we eliminate a lot of these radio and phones and all these different types of frequencies that are being imminent around us, if we're able to eliminate that some way, it allows us to get more back in touch with nature, with the ground, with the etheric field that is present from Mama G, not these synthetic waves, these synthetic frequencies. We need the frequencies of the earth, the frequencies of the ground. We need the frequencies of the trees, the plants around us. We need those frequencies to maintain a healthy, stable, homeostatic, physical homeostatic state as humans. And we keep interrupting them with these stupid EMF frequencies, and we need to eliminate those, or at least minimalize them almost down to minute form, so that they don't interfere with the progression of the DNA.
Okay, let me ask you a real stupid.
No one likes to work out. You gotta go out of your way to work out. If you want nature, you gotta go out of your way to get nature nowadays. Same thing. Right. Gotta take care of yourself.
I hear you, but I think what I'm saying is that that's the way we've gotten, because we've lived in a world full of parasites and POSs. I think if we were to move into a world where it's a world of understanding and care about each other as a complete whole, we can get to a place where, you maybe have to go out of your way, but not as much as you do now. You don't have to go change your entire lifestyle and become completely, off grid or whatever. You don't have to do those things to maintain a daily connectivity with the earth around you. And right now, that's how it is. You either live in a city or you live in the suburbs. You live in the suburbs or you live out in the country. What is it? So it's, anyway, that's just my thought process on it. I think it can be just done a lot better than it's being done now. And we shouldn't have to go as far out of our way as we do to connect with the earth.
It's all mentioned in Conquering the Solar System. What you're describing is the entire proposal for an alternate stage 2 of phase 1 versus where we're headed right now. That's the battle, is that stage 2 looks different than is currently being envisioned by our Chinese adversaries and the New World Order, because they have a top-down view on it. Their interest in the moon is not for future expansion. Their interest is in for control back down to this place. And it's quite possible, I want to remind people, if portals are possible, or if they connected to aliens and maybe some ship or learned it, it's quite possible that they've learned the secrets, just like in that kids movie, of actually extracted where the vulture looking things extract the essence right out of their victims. I mean, that movie is really weird in the first place. Like, where do they get this? This entire thing is very hippie-ish. But the question is it possible to extract the quintessence out of people? And theoretically, why not? Because if chi is a charge and spirit is a charge, then it's quite reasonable to expect that Jing is a charge. And if Jing is a charge, then it's something that is not just your DNA or your plasma or your bone marrow, but something that works between them, that gives you the life force, because chi is not the life force. Chi is vapor. Jing is the life force. So the question is, can they extract essence? Maybe they can extract it right now. And I don't mean just working people to death at two and three jobs. I mean literally extracting it and feeding off of it, in which case They don't need to go into any other planets. Just keep this one as a nice pig pen. And so building that stage 2 to match a better vision is pretty vital on a lot of levels.
Wow. Okay, look. There's another thing that I hear here that bothers me somewhat. It's like the whole question of Gaia, right, or this planet being our mother, or something like that. I mean, I get back to what I tell people. It's like, they say that, Jesus loves us humans. Gaia hates us. Make no mistake. I mean, a believable human home world would not look like this at all, right? Humans are, I mean, Ganymede was the believable human home world, right? It was a freshwater ocean world without any, without any terrors or anything. You didn't have any sea monsters. You didn't have, a believable human home world to have before.
How are you getting that conclusion? When we look at Ganymede now, we don't see that much freshwater. So where is that coming from?
I think nature is extremely dangerous and scary, and it is, and it'll kill you in a matter of days. We have shows about this. Things aren't as harmonious as everyone wants to believe. Everything's eating everything out there. It's the Ouroboros. That's all you have.
But the trackers that study Tom Brown science have the opposite experience. So at first, you go into nature and you have that experience as the terror of it. But then when you're in harmony with it, everything in nature revolves around you, and it doesn't go after you. There's this symbiosis that exists that you don't have that kind of level of fear while you're in the forest. I mean, that's not
it can be both things. And what I'm saying is it's raw. It's unforgiving and unrelenting.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Hey, humans have only ever lived on this planet by means of technology. I mean, without the technology, we would not survive here. It's like.
What do you mean by technology?
Well, at first it meant things like javelins and atlatls. Humans did not have to invent the atlatl when they came here. They just took the fishing points off and put more lethal points on them to kill hominids. Kill Neanderthals with, right? Cave bears, saber-tooths, terror birds. All of these kinds of things. It's like a reasonable human home world would not have any of that stuff. Humans would be able to splash around, right? I mean, we're basically aquatic mammals, yet we cannot go into the waters of this planet. It's like too many things that would eat people in the waters of this planet. You didn't have that, right?
Well,
it's like
we had to battle the birds. I mean, at least we forget the bird wars. There's still huge birds that, I mean. What's all this about eggs and Easter and eggs and everything, and bunnies don't lay eggs? And anyway, what I'm saying is we had to battle through birds. We had to battle through, and that was probably one of the worst things that we had to battle. I mean, can you imagine huge pterodactyls? And they have birds that are extremely dangerous. I forget the name of it.
Cassowary?
Yeah, cassowary.
Okay.
And there was probably a bunch of different kind of birds like this. And
yeah, the terror bird was the worst of it.
They want us to believe that we were vegetarian, like walk around, look for nuts and go foresting, nuts, berries, but they never talk about us eating eggs, like. And having to climb trees to eat eggs and risk our lives to eat eggs. I mean, swans are rude as hell. You ever get attacked by a swan?
No.
I mean, come on.
No, anyway. Now, humans are aquatic, right? It's like a believable human home world would need at least 4 things. It would have to be bright, because humans have relatively tiny eyes. It's like human night vision is almost close to being worthless. Okay, it would have to be bright. It would have to be wet because of the aquatic adaptations. We share 100 different characteristics with the aquatic mammals. Okay, it would have to be safe. It would have to be safe both from sea monsters and from cosmic radiation. And the
Why
main
would it
thing
have
that
to be
protects us
safe?
from, I'm sorry?
Why would it have to be safe? Why would it have to be protecting from these?
Well,
I
I
think
mean,
I think the creatures are built off of mystery and danger and fear, and looking into the distance for eyes that are staring back. I mean,
okay.
why
Look,
does
it's
that?
like the main thing that protects us from cosmic radiation is the intrinsic magnetosphere. There's only one other body in the system that has that, and that's Ganymede. Okay. Without that, we couldn't live here. That's cosmic radiation. You've got sea monsters, you've got jellyfish, you've got sharks. You couldn't have that in a believable human home world, right? It was like the adaptations that Elaine Morgan describes are not from wading around in ankle deep or knee deep water. It's from spending 15 hours a day in water that's over your head. Okay. It would have to be bright. It would have to be wet. It would have to be safe, right? It would have to be warm because of the lack of fur. Okay, humans don't have any native protection from cold,
Yeah,
right? So,
but blubber is meant to protect you from cold, and that's why
okay,
dolphins and whales have it, and we have it.
right. We have it, but not enough to protect it. Not enough for purposes, right?
Well, maybe it could be just our generation went through the flood, and it's in our DNA, and we started to gain blubber, and we didn't have blubber before.
No, I think the human adaptations are I don't see any evolution amongst humans. I mean, you've got variation, right? You've got microevolutionary changes, right? But you don't have anything resembling changes from one kind of an animal to the next. Okay. What humans would have been eating on Ganymede, or any kind of a place where humans live in the universe, really, was like fruit. Our digestive system is that of a fructivore. Okay, humans do not swim efficiently the way seals or dolphins do, right? It takes a lot of energy, so that the sugar, that you get. I mean, that's the fruit component of the original human diet, right? I mean, you could put a cat in a room with cookies, all the cake and cookies and candy. In the world, the cat would starve. Okay, I mean, real carnivores do not have any taste for sweet things the way that we do. That's part of the original human diet. Now, the other part of the original human diet was going to be like shellfish and fish, right? So that we would come up on land to cook things. In other words, to eat the things that were not, the fructivore digestive system wasn't going to handle by itself, right? In other words, hard veggies and meat. So that you'd come up and cook that stuff and let the fire do 95% of the work of digesting it. Okay. That's interesting. And it's like, well, the question is, why do humans lack fur? There's one thing and one thing only that I can picture ever for which lack of fur would ever have been an advantage. Okay. And that would be like using fire in open and windy areas. Okay. The hominids, the Neanderthal had fire, but he had to be a whole lot more careful of it. It's like an incident that might cause a minor burn to a human could light a Neanderthal up like a torch and fry him. Okay, the Neanderthal had a 6-inch fur coat. That's why you don't find Neanderthal needles. Like a creature with a 6-inch fur coat doesn't require needles. But you have to be very careful with fire, and especially if you're going to use fire like in open areas where you have wind, right? Then then not having the fur coat would be a positive advantage. I can't think of any other thing, for which lacking fur would be an advantage. It's like, I mean, whales have blubber, yeah, but it's like seals have fur. It's like other kinds of marine, otters have fur. It's, other kinds of marine, aquatic mammals have fur, right? It's like, creatures that live in hot territories. I mean, all of your African animals have fur coats on. I mean, despite the fact that it gets 100 degrees regularly, they have to just lie there and pant sometimes, just deal with the hot weather. you asked about water on Ganymede. Ganymede has like a very, very low moment of inertia. That means most of the mass is concentrated towards the center. Now the normal explanation that you read for that, they claim that the place has like a very, very deep sort of a salt water outer mantle, right? Now, despite there being no real evidence of sodium on Ganymede, what you've really got is like you've got an outer mantle of pumice, which is lighter than water. It floats, right? It's like you've got like a freshwater ocean world where you've got anchored islands and floating bergs of pumice, right, with luxuriant vegetation. And this is the human home worlds. Like I said, this would be our mother, right? This would be if any body in our system is going to have been the original, place for humans to have lived. I mean, it's going to be Ganymede. It's not going to be Earth. You've just got too many problems. On Earth, you've got the creatures of Pandora's box. You've got fleas and chiggers and ticks and every sort of poisonous and stinging thing. You've got biting flies. Have you guys ever heard of the black fly season that you get up there in Vermont and New Hampshire?
We get it in Michigan.
Do? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't walk around outside without insect repellent on, would you? I mean,
It's only around it's only around like certain areas of Great Lakes that I have.
okay. Well, no, I mean, I've seen it in Northfield, Vermont, right? It's like up there at Norwich University where they used to have the Russian language immersion programs, and I would get there. Those programs would start after the black fly season was over, in theory at least, but there would always be one or two of them left over flying around. And if you're out there on a tennis court trying to hit tennis balls, and one of those things decides to come after you, have to forget about tennis and just make sure that you've killed the black fly. I mean, a tennis racket works on a black fly. You just got to make sure that the sucker is dead before you go on trying to play tennis anymore. I mean, that's just one of them, right? And it's like you can imagine those things flying around all over the place. Like I say, in a reasonable human home world, you're not going to have that. Right? You're not going to have scorpions. You're not going to have poisonous spiders. You're not going to have any of this shit. You're not going to have hominids, right? The hominid was like, the Neanderthal was like an apex creature for dark worlds, right? It's like humans are the apex creature for bright worlds. I imagine anywhere in the universe that you have bright worlds like Ganymede used to be, or like Earth is now for the most part, right? Then you can have humans, right? You have dark worlds like the Earth was 60,000 years ago. You can have hominids like the Neanderthal. They're no line of descent from the one to the other. In fact, you've got like 4 things on the Earth that resemble humans that there have ever been. You've got monkeys, apes, hominids, and then humans, right? I have reason to believe that no one of these things is related to any of the other 3. I mean, that's an interesting story.
So let's go back to the idea of what are the pathways that spirits travel on. Halloween here, and the universe being open, and the portals being open, the tubes within tubes within tubes, the wheels within wheels, the sprockets within sprockets, the gyroscopic type of nature, the proclivities of all of this stuff to be what we see in the Dougherty set, and what Don Scott's words, Don Scott's math backs up as these birkeland currents. What are we gonna do about it? If each one of these tunnels are a creature, like I predict, that creatures ultimately are built inside of these tubes, inside of resonant tubes within resonant tubes, and there's a sympathetic resonance that's built. Speaking of creatures, I just found this cool little spider going towards the light, going outside from inside my house. What is it that right there? What is it that draws creatures to the light. Sometimes some night creatures like moths and bugs and insects. But ultimately, earlier we were talking about portals and stargates, and I think that everything is just different plasma morphologies. I think that plasma after it goes through a phase transition, including us as living art pieces and crystallized life, processed crystal, everything, us having a new download and receiving a new download and new information changes the physiology of your entire body and your mindset. Has the propensity to. It could do that. Has the potential to. However much you decide to resonate with an object. I mean, earlier we were talking about crystals and how they make us feel and the energy that we get when we touch them. I have this rock that seems like it was hand polished. I think I talked about it. And it has a great energy to it. Just like a fabulous energy. Where is it? Where did I just put it? I put it up here. I often just hold rocks and crystals and different things like that. But a lot of that is just our appreciation for it, or even just as much as you are able to appreciate the object, you can grow in appreciation equally. The more tuned in you are, the more the secrets of the universe are open to you, and the synchronicities will start to line up. Oh, here's the rock. Okay. So my kid wanted this rock for her birthday, and it's like a worry stone. The whole stone is hand polished, so it becomes a mirror image of the skin of your hands, your skin of your hand, but on stone. If you felt a hand polished rock, it's one of the smoothest things you can feel on your hand. Now that's like how the universe works, as it mirrors and reflects and mirrors and reflects these individual birkeland currents and creatures. Think about this. If we could figure out the origin of all creatures, the shape of the origin of the geometry of the beginning shapes, the what is called abiotic or abiogenesis, the geometry of the structure before things come into existence. This is also called morphospace. The morphospace is any possible in biology. It's like any possible outcome for a body or limb or organ to grow into other organs. They've taken the stem cells from different parts of the body and grew them in different conditions, and now they can grow. They all grow. If you grow it in the conditions of a heart, it'll grow into a heart. If you grow it in the outside conditions of a lung, it'll grow into a lung, and you can even grow eyeballs this way. So nature is open for us to edit it. And nature seems kind of ignorant when you watch the creatures in the species, and we try to fool them even with other bots, like robots that we built, and we go around and hang out with them and watch them. A lot of nature is really dumb. It's dumb to our perception, some of our perceptions. So the fact that nature allows itself to be opened and hacked and rebuilt and reprogrammed and played around with, that alone, I don't know, that shows us a lot of things, doesn't it? That it's vulnerable, and it's able to be played around with, and I think curiosity, we're going to just keep playing with it. You know, we can probably create reality ourselves.
It never seems to be an improvement, though. You know, these every time we play around with it, it's like gilding the lily. You ruin the form.
Well, when I think of nature, I think of all of nature. I don't really think of humans, really. I kind of think, what I like to do is I like to think of nature and all of, like, this is the naturalist approach. How does every creature mate? How does every creature? What are the really strange things and the oddities in nature? And that helps you really have you know, a larger, all-encompassing view. Like, what is really happening in reality? Screw thinking about the politics of humans and where humans came from. You know, just think about nature, and it's like, wow. And it's just, everything just constantly blows your mind how brilliant it is, and like self-repairing, self-similar. There's all sorts of mirroring effects that are going on where animals are becoming, for camouflage. What's our camouflage? Do humans have camouflage? You know, I don't know.
No, it's like an aquatic mammal would have no use for camouflage.
We have something better than camouflage.
There's a lot of color in the coral reefs and the animals in the in the water, and that's for power and control, deception, and
we have something better. We have the best adaptation, called imagination.
Yeah, prefrontal cortex.
Well, yeah, but we don't know where the imagination really actually comes from. But that imagination is the best advantage that's ever been found. It's even better than the opposable thumb, which we also are the only ones that have. So we've got super advantage, and that's why we're where we are. We have superposition, superpower.
Yeah. But what's our camouflage?
We can look like anything we want to. If we really try, we can look like anything we want to. People imitate all sorts of things. It's amazing.
Oh yeah. We
maybe humans are the camouflage guys, hypothetically.
It's the intelligence.
Dimensional.
Well, what is there another species that we're trying to look like to camouflage ourselves?
Some of the things we don't want seeing is don't really have that much in the way of vision as far as picking up forms, right? Deer, you know, which is one of the main things that we hunt. Our Bambi sees motion very well. He sees forms badly, if at all. You know, I've known guys who would go out like just to see if it could be done. Go, you know, like in a tree stand with bows and arrows, right?
Created
and a white shirt and a tie on.
SKULLET.
You know, and had deer get up, you know, 20, 30 feet away before they ever picked up on it, right? I mean, he could have shot the deer with a white shirt and a tie on.
Yeah, so it's funny how ignorant. It's funny how seemingly ignorant the scales of intelligence are. Even humans, we're extremely ignorant, and we're capable of being fooled, like pulling the wool over our eyes instantly.
Speaking of things that are fooling us, the Garden of the Gods height is 666 feet. Now that's funny. That's just too funny.
I'm sorry. What does that amount to, Ramon?
Nothing. It's just
Garden-
hilarious. Just hilarious. The Garden of the
Wow.
Gods. The Garden of the Gods is
666.
666 feet high. That's really funny. Anyways,
So talking about stargates and portals, and it's the geometry, and when you think about it, it's the architecture. It's the geometry put into 3D, three-dimensionality, which would be architecture. I think of selenite and how selenite is long tubes, and how a lot of the time it breaks in Burj Khalifa-esque type of manner, which is like a Birkeland current being received. Like if the largest building in the world, I think it's the Burj Khalifa, something like that. If you
tallest. The largest building in the world is the Louisville Mega Caverns, but the tallest building in the world is the Burj Khalifa.
So you look at that and you think about dialing into the power. If you look at the geometry of that building and that structure, and you think about dialing into Stargates, or you think of even better, the One World Trade Center. Guess what that is? That's the square within the square, which is the Dougherty set, which is the Birkeland current, which is the inverse square law. So you have the bottom of the building as a square, then you have the top of the building as a square, but it's the very inscribed, rotated, what is it, 45 degrees? Yeah, 90 degrees, rotated 90 degrees. The square inside of it at the very top of the building. If you look at the One World Trade Center. So we've never stopped building these structures, and we're going to continue to build these structures. But I think the next step is to grow them. I don't know, artificial caves, artificial crystals that can be built. I mean, we're growing crystals in space, but maybe we could grow. Maybe there's going to be these huge, impossible crystals to grow on Earth, brought down back to Earth, and then they could build fake caverns with it, and it'll be like the
Superman's Fortress of Solitude type stuff.
Yeah. I mean, what's that all about? You could, I don't know. If we can just grow these crystals, we can grow reality. I'm telling you. We already do. That's what reality is. It's fractal. It's a body growing a body, growing a body, growing a body, growing a body in a sea of bodies, in a sea of bodies. So it's
just as much as the human physical form is also fractal. I think
it could be said the whole purpose. Sorry, I have to keep going. The whole purpose of the electromagnetic spectrum is to build bodies that are fractal, that are building bodies that are fractal. So the 99% of space is necessary to build and have the breeding grounds of the electromagnetic spectrum to actually build up such a recursive nested structure of cyclicity, cycles within cycles within cycles of fractality, in order to grow and digest these beams of light, which is light becoming bodies, which it starts as sound, alpha in waves, things like that. Built is preeminent to light. It's the precursor to light. Sound is created, which builds up light, and then light grows out of sound as a process crystal, and we can play with these with shapes inscribed within shapes. The power of the pentagrams and pentagons and the regular polygons and polytopes is the power. That's what built these structures. And that's why on Halloween and on All Hallows Eve and all these other times, all of these other instances of people using shape power to manifest and bring a spirit here to the world, or a demon here to the world, or communicate with the dead through necromancy, which is very real. it all comes down to a lot of the time a pentagram, a pentagon, and the pentacle, the 5-point star inscribed within a circle. And we see this in the classic trope on all these Halloween or on all these horror movies, where there is people who are using this power and weird things start happening. Like it almost comes from the ether that tell these people to go and kill in the name of this spirit, and you're doing the right thing in the name of this spirit. And a lot of the time that stuff is stifled in the court case, and they don't talk about that stuff because they don't want to expose how much of it actually goes on. So there's a power in the shape that people are using to communicate with the ether. And that's why the pentagon's the shape of the pentagon, and it goes down a bunch of layers.
Yeah.
The pentagon within a pentagon within a pentagon within a pentagon.
By the way, we're going to have them licked, and I'll share a screen, and it's a little bit of a preview as to the next stage of things. We're going to supersede using both the power of 7 and of 8. Hold on, what's happening here? Oh yeah, hold on, give me a second.
Well, the power of 7 is used for occultic purposes all the time. All the powers are. The thing is that they're powerful, and there's power in it. Just like people see power in the crystals and the tubular structure, the tubes within tubes of the crystals. You know, the crystalline lattice structure. There's power in that. That's power that is in the earth, and the Bible teaches us that that's evil. So but is it really? I mean, come on.
I've not seen the Bible teach that. I've not seen the Bible teach that. That's what evangelicals say, but they don't know they don't know anything about the Bible hardly.
Well, I guess the Bible technically says all sorts of stuff that people misinterpret constantly. So what I forgot what my train of thinking was on that, but the Bible says do not be of the earth. The earth is the opposite chirality. The earth and crystals are the opposite chirality of life.
Guys, did this come through?
Yeah. 7.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is that was my thinking. Don't be of the earth, be in the earth. And also it says don't, the people who love you on earth, what is it? If you're loved by everyone, then it's most likely you're, which we've learned in Hollywood and everything else, you're vile. If everyone all of a sudden loves you, in most occasions, but then I don't know. That's whatever. Don't love the world or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then so then that creates a divide between the world, the earth, and the spirit, and us being aliens, and this isn't our home, and we are paid and bought and certified and of an extraterrestrial origin, and the Christians are supposedly possessed by the Holy Spirit. So that Holy Spirit in people is our true home is zero, net zero, and zero balances all motion through earth, through all solids. Zero balances everything. Stillness, that's the power. And we go back to stillness. All things that are in motion are seeking stillness, and all things that are still are seeking motion. So this is what builds me up to believe that these birkeland currents, the electromagnetic spectrum wants to manifest, and it's evolving, and it is part and parcel of these tubes. And we can go through these, and we can reconstruct these, and we can play with these just like we do with DNA, and just like we do with biology. This is like space-time fractals, space-time DNA, space-time splicing, and creature stacking. It's creatures stacked on top of creatures stacked on top of creatures. That's what the electromagnetic spectrum is, and it's mirroring it on Earth through the profundity of different creatures, the dynamism of plasma to the morphology of plasma to have such dynamism, and the dynamic geometry. The geometry has to be dynamic, and that's what it is. and it has to be phase conjugate, which is layers of golden mean stacked on top of golden mean stacked on top of golden mean, that builds out the Euler's number into bodies. So the actually what it is heat becoming cold and cold becoming hot, and it's all that's why data is entropy. Data is entropy because it's heat death, and negentropy is also data. But the negentropic spectrum of the data hasn't been fully mapped because it's what's constantly being birthed, and we are studying what's already death, what's already entropic and growing outward, versus the opposite end of the spectrum, which is the centripetal end of the spectrum, which is moving towards source. All of our understanding is using spectral analysis off of dead, decaying everything, dead, decaying light, decaying, retarded light. So there's a beginning to all this, and that's where speciation occurs. Speciation occurs inside of like all sorts of it. It's happening right now. As we learn more information, we grow into new creatures, and we can grow and evolve together and share this information. And it's all increasing at a rapid rate. And a lot of people can't take it in because, information's at our fingertips and it's distracting us.
Okay.
So just like a prism refracts white light into many colors, the magnetosphere refracts Birkeland currents into many different Birkeland currents that are bodies. You can look at the two like a similar type of occurrence.
So see, that would get into color schemes and the utilization of, I'm just kind of relating the two, but it goes into color schemes at that point. So as far as, the Roy G. Biv type concept, where you're, I don't know, as a human being brought into existence based upon, I guess, location, multiple factors. It's not just one factor, but as that individual's brought into existence, then the corresponding Birkeland current node that you're connected to would have a designated, Roy G. Biv type matching frequency color scheme to it.
And guess it's QCD, quantum chromodynamics, a little bit anyway, but guess where the Birkeland current begins? The Birkeland current begins in fertilization. When the egg goes inside of the sperm, that spark of light starts the umbilical cord, and the electrical manifestation of that doubling sequence, which is what we've seen in the Birkeland current. That is like the zona pellucida, when it pops, that spark. And then
so really what you're doing here is you're making the case for eugenics, big time.
Well,
because the substance of the eggs, the substance of the egg and the sperm would make all of the difference in the world to the frequency that's emanated for when the light is, when those two join, the light that is made at that point in time. So you're really just making the case for eugenics. Oh man,
this is the best case for eugenics. I've been talking about this for years, and I think people are already doing it because we can observe in the lab what egg and sperm create the largest spark, and that creates the healthiest, best human. Done. Period. Mic drop. It is the case for eugenics, and we can do it, and we can. And what is that going to make? Do we want to do that? Is that what we're actually trying to do? But yeah, the answer is yes. The answer is that's the answer, and it's very simple. It's zinc. So we talked about
if that were the case, buddy, then why are so many energy healers so ugly and so many douchebags look like they're worth $1 million?
But you're talking about two different things, brother. You're talking about natural beauty versus.
I'm not talking about two different things. I'm talking about something I've observed, which is when you go to these energy conferences, the people are not that handsome, and you go around people who won't even give you the time of day because they think they're better than you, and they look all gray.
Because our society has been corrupted.
You could say it that way, but I know this: they're douchebags, and they're not better than me.
Because society's
Period.
been corrupted.
Maybe it might also be that the law of evolution teaches them to look down on people who are lower in the caste or class, and might be automatically detected. They may not even notice they're doing it.
So that's neither here nor there. We literally.
No, it is here. It is exactly here and there.
Well, I'm just
That's
saying.
the whole reason why eugenics is shit. It's shit because it doesn't work.
Well, this is a clear path that makes perfect sense. I don't know if people have traveled it yet, or taken it into the medical industry, or heck. I mean, that this is a clear path.
Yeah, they're doing it. They're doing it in Iceland. They're aborting every Down syndrome baby. 100% of Down syndrome babies in Iceland are aborted.
Okay, I mean that's 90% throughout
issue-
the industrialized world.
I think
Yeah, but
what we
that's
need to
nothing
kind of take a minute here is, and this is my
the amount
fault.
of life.
Listen, I think the reality is that because of the negative history we've had with eugenics up to this point,
I gotta go pull
using the
Miguel.
term.
You guys continue down this.
Yeah.
All right.
Just using the term eugenics wasn't really appropriate, I think, for the conversation. It's just the only term that we've got right now to be able to use to describe it in the terms for this conversation. I think it has more, and it's not, and so I think it's not the system of going about and having the Darwinistic natural selection type thing occur, which is very much a strong thing. But I think it's when you start trying to control what is obviously, creation's process. I don't know. I think that's the issue. I don't know, man. I couldn't answer to Ramon's question of why most spiritual healers are ugly, and I don't know that. I don't know the reason.
We tried to tap into electricity. We tried to put electricity into a jar. That's what we've been trying to do since we've been on Earth. And then we finally did it. We controlled it. We realized we could control and play with it, and it powers almost everything we do. So playing with nature is the point of nature, the openness of nature. I guess I'm pretty liberal when it comes to some of that stuff, but because I think that there are answers, and I think that we're going to find bad stuff to do, but we're also going to find a lot of good stuff as we search. It's the only way to get into the space-time DNA of these yuga cycles and actually understand these yuga cycles, because we've done this geometry before. We've had I don't know who, but people from India throughout millennia that have been talking about this reality and expressing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that a minute ago I was going to make the comment, as you said, you were talking about the physical of, you have the creature stacking on one of another. You have all of these physical attributes obviously taking place in the, our 3D world. I think that because the concept of as above, as above, so below, looking at things from a fourth dimensional type concept and onto the other dimensionalities of what is a 3D world, you see that in that's where the ascended masters or spirit world or whatever we want to call it, that's where they exist, but they do mirror in terms of time. Back to Teddy's concept of what's, how is time related to all this, is, the time then as it moves forward, those entities are very much tied to us in that reality of time, because as we move forward and progress down timelines, they have to come along just because it's just the reality of what we're faced with. So that might be a very real, I don't know, kind of concept to talk about there further if we want. But in order for higher level plane dimensional beings to have any interface with our current world, they have to honor the concept of time and the progression with which we are traversing through it, that because of the concept as above, so below.
Yeah, and there's different time scales, and time dilation is very real. When you're focused, time dilation becomes a fever pitch.
Right, but that's just velocity. See, that's just velocity. I hear you about what you're saying about focus and everything like that, but that goes back to I think what Teddy was talking about with his redneck view of light a minute ago, when you change the energetic flow of an electric wire from one dipole to the other, it goes one direction to the other, it doesn't really change directions. It's that every single electron inside of there, or swimming in its Z-pinch figure 8 type path, is then basically it changes charge and goes to the other direction individually. So as an individual electron swimming in one direction, it decides now it has to swim in the other, and that's what creates the directional flow in the other direction. So just as that takes place, I think time is a focused kind of concept. It moves in perpetual motion, always in one direction. And as a result, you can focus in on it to a minuscule amount, or you can look at it from a larger perspective. But either way, it's still moving in a certain direction based upon the originating node of this particular reality. But the moment you try to get off on any other side kind of branch of it, it's not the same thing. I think where we're moving perpetually forward in a directional node forward on a quote unquote time scale, but you can focus differently on that, but you're still connected to that particular source node.
Yeah, time is on the outside of donut, of torices, and it's literally there's an angle that can be observed that time bubbles on the edges of torices as they kiss, like a kissing sphere, or when you do sphere stacking, an Apollonian gasket is squeezed out. That's the Z-pinch. These Apollonian gasket type geometries are squeezed out as the donuts pinch and kiss each other on the edges, and that's where time is. That's what I literally like. So time, it's like it seems like it's in a linear progression, but there's an azimuthal aspect of it as it radiates in all directions, right? So it seems like it's a polarity or a poloidal in a one certain direction, but it's always spinning and always manifesting. It's like nothing is moving or everything is moving infinitely fast.
The way I see it is that if you look at time a little bit like a clock, if the universe is spherical and you travel around the outside of the sphere, you're going to wind up at the same place. And and time is split up into these geometries as well. And again, as the Yugas explain, there is a cycle that brings you back somehow to the same place.
It's a larger helix within helix.
And you're only heading in one direction. You're only, but
the point that I was trying to make, right? And I think the point that I was trying to make is, yes, you're right, but it also depends on the perspective, or, as Buddy was saying, the amount of focus that you have on observing whatever it is you're observing through the construct of time. So whether or not you're taking a bird's eye view or you're taking a microscopic view, whatever the way you're choosing, or the observing nature, even if it's electric, Buddy, it's the observational, I guess, not proclivity, but observation sets the tone for time, or sets the velocity of time.
Yeah, if you're a mayfly and you only live for a day, you're not even going to know what the sun is. So it's all scalar. I mean, if you only live for a day, you're not going to know the effects of the moon, the sun, just about anything, basically. You're going to live in a fairly limited little environment, and your time scale is going to be very different. The things that you're going to have to pack into your 24 hours as a mayfly, you would take a human being years to achieve all that, I suppose.
Right. So then that goes back to velocity.
Well,
so
it comes back to
the speed
scale.
with which electrons are turning, the charge, the electrical charge that
we exist on something
then affects the velocity
of the
charge.
You guys are talking over top of each other, driving me absolutely up the wall. Just one at a time, please.
Okay.
Either one, I don't care who.
Right. Well, human beings exist on a certain, our 72 years. It's a very convenient time frame. Now, where 72 years light years takes you, isn't very far in the universe, in our galaxy even. I think it just gets us fairly close to Andromeda. So if you're into watching the stars move in relation to each other, you've got to speed the thing up to make any sense out of the movement, really. So that's my opinion. That it's
that's how they do the math for the Yuga cycles.
Yeah.
They look at the precession and they look at everything else, and then they do the math of it. But it happens to be the exact same math of the Dougherty set. So it's like, did they draw the Dougherty set? Was the Dougherty set part of St. John's revelation in the Bible? And is that part? Because it's all geometric. The whole thing is geometric. And if you go through the Bible, there's always this tome where someone's measuring the temple. There's a boy or a child or a man. Behold, I looked, and someone was measuring the temple, and it was always during visions on high in a mountain, and this temple is being built and measured with a golden censer. So it's this geometry that it's a two-way flow. It's a bidirectional flow of time. That's why, and we can only see the death part of the cycle of things already manifested. And that's why earlier we were talking about these portals and seeing into glass spheres and seeing and scrying using smoke. Because if you focus and you concentrate, the future is already there. And the future is also manifested, and it's intended and intentional. So you can build it. But you can also see that, like you were talking about, looking for the water, dowsing, looking for the water in the electrical difference, excuse me. If this is all about chirality, which it shows that it is throughout history, the swastika and the geometry of the secrets of the spin, the 90-degree rotation on the spin, which is clearly prevalent and throughout the whole entire Dougherty set. This is the dividing of the light and the dark, the living and the dead, the chirality of everything that is crystallized is moving in one direction. Everything that's living is moving in the opposite direction. I can't emphasize the importance of this. And the secret to it is phi is the solution to geometric and arithmetic progression. Everything's geometrically and arithmetically progressing. That's why it seems like God is a mathematician, because we're seeing these exponential growths in the system, and we're seeing this. But the secret to going inside of this, which is like the fiber optics of the universe, the literally probably why the Dougherty set is called Love is Watching. These things are just part of it and part and parcel. We're going to use a galaxy to see other galaxies. There's a lens there. There's an optic lens, and we're gonna be able to detect different life forms and exist as them. And I don't know. I can only point people towards the way, and open up these literal gates. The gates are every single number is a gate. Every single gate has its own unique thumb and fingerprint. This leads to everything being unique. Every life experience, everything is unique. Uniqueness on all scales, unique atomic uniqueness. That's why there's resonant memory. My whole body, I might have a platypus in my body because there's an atom from a platypus. I can tune into that. We're built to be able to tune into any creature and have a sympathetic experience and resonant experience with it. That's already there. that ability can be magnified to a magnitude for us to start probing other galaxies and other star clusters and star systems.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you talk about probing other star systems and other galaxies, then the speed of light is nowhere near fast enough, right? I mean, you've got to be using this other thing.
Yeah,
you know,
instantaneous.
Which
We
is
won't-
like,
It's charged.
that may be your definition of instantaneous. Be like here to Andromeda in 1 or 2 seconds. That's pretty fast, right? That would let you communicate, right? It's like Walt Thornhill said that, that our own galaxy wouldn't work if communications was limited to C, right? In other words, if half the galaxy really didn't have any way of knowing anything at all about the other half of the galaxy in less than 150,000 years, well, I mean, that doesn't really work.
What
You know, the
about
whole
quantum
thing-
entanglement, though? Because
I'm sorry?
that transcends light speed, doesn't it? The quantum connection. That's
Yeah, that's instantaneous. We will be able to do all of this from
Okay.
from Earth. We'll be able to probe all of the universe from Earth. All the information is holographic and wrapped up inside of itself. Tubes within tubes within tubes through projective dynamic geometry. This dynamic geometry can and will be opened up. And part of the secret, I think, the way in is the blue whirl. The blue whirl is a new type of fire that was discovered in 2016, and it mirrors all sorts of different things in the Dougherty set. But that's the topological structure of the stacking. And it's a completely soot-free, carbon-free emission flame. When you're burning, you can burn all sorts of different things, carbon-free emission. So we're going to probably end up using that as a power source or something important, because that shape, heterodyning within itself, is, I believe, how birkeland currents dock onto planets and how they dock into the vortices on Jupiter. There's a docking mechanism, and it's seen in light lens flares and our cameras. That same docking geometry is the blue whirl. And so we should be able to build a system that uses and utilizes that docking technology, but it has to be maybe in the atmosphere. But yeah, they're talking about utilizing the vortex technology of the blue whirl for cleaning up oil spills, and having big, huge blue whirls just cleaning up oil spills. Another thing that this geometry is a pillar of fire condensed into its purest form. So that's how it's made. It starts as a pillar of fire, and the pillar of fire becomes the geometry of the blue whirl. This is a direct way in and out of the Dougherty set on all scales.
Right.
I've developed geometries and inventions where you can create the blue whirl and have it float in the air through sonic levitation. You could float the blue whirl in sonic levitation, but I think this is the blue whirl is the new pillar of fire that's leading us out of Egypt and to the promised land.
Buddy, I've got a
Yeah.
question here involving birkeland currents. Okay, I mean, my own theory about the origin of our solar system has everything that we see in our own system now having arisen in a single, like Herbig-Haro string, right, which related to a particular birkeland current. There's no other way that you get Herbig-Haro strings, I don't believe, right? And the question is, do we still have that original birkeland current passing through our system? And if we do, is there a possibility of there being more than one solar system originating in the same birkeland current, right? In other words, is it possible to have, brother or sister solar systems out there a ways, right, but created by the same birkeland current that created our system?
Yeah, there's a system that's directly ahead of our system, and there's a system that's directly below our system. We're feeding into, I think, Arcturus directly, our sun is feeding off of that whole galaxy system through Birkeland currents. And then there's a system beneath it. I forget what the galaxy is. Jim Wenninger, we were talking about it a lot. He did great explanations on these other systems. So according to
Okay, I'm not talking about galaxies here. I'm talking about other solar systems. Is it possible that the same Birkeland current that created our system may have also created other solar systems that might be within, say, some kind of a reasonable distance from us? You know, not galactic distances, but like, you know, maybe a few hundred light years, whatever.
Yeah, I think there's an anti-Earth, a mirror Earth, but I think it exists inside of the filament. I think the mirror, the anti-Earth, the pre-Earth, preeminent, is in the ether. It's the ether, the data ether, and that's how we can communicate with probably. I don't know if there's two Earths. I don't know if there's a million, but I had a very real and intense dream where I had to go kill myself in a bunch of different Earths, in a bunch of different places, and every time I killed one of myself, I got stronger. And then I found out that was already a movie, Jet Li the One. And then someone told me it was a movie, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what happened in my dream. So I can't tell you if there's a bunch of me out there, but I can tell you that if you can overcome and kill the layers of putrefaction that we do, which we call sin. Overcoming one thing allows you to overcome the next thing that you can't see that's there. Then you overcome the next thing, and you have to recognize what they are. You have to repent for them. That builds a new body. That's always a new body. So you're constantly being reborn. You have to introspectively look at all of the things that you're doing wrong that's affecting other people, and the more you walk in the light, the more the signs of growth and generativity, paths of connectedness show up, and they show up as synchronicities. And that's why in the Bible it says, flee evil and evil will flee from you. Don't draw towards it. And all of this is for a purpose of sanctification. And this is what led to eugenics. Sanctification is becoming as good as you possibly can. Not necessarily pious, because I don't know if people can become pious. But growing, and the process of sanctification is how you become a pillar in the kingdom of heaven, by overcoming what? Overcoming your wrongdoings, and analyzing them, knowing that they're wrong, stopping them and changing them and replacing them with good positive habits. And that sanctification process is becoming more and more godly, more and more godlike, which draws you towards the source. It's the geometry of the Christic spiral that draws you towards source. That's why on the outside are the dogs. On the outside of the gates are the dogs, the sinners, the liars, the wrongdoers. And the gates are pearls, and the gates are narrow, and the gates to get it. This is all about projectively, dynamically enfolding your DNA and your life system into the universe. That's what the battle is for our soul. So there's Dan Winter talks about correct ways of dying and the geometry of immortality, and how it's a life, there's a living geometry. The living geometry, Walter Russell talks about the living vortex, the life vortex, the generative vortex is the vortex that's moving towards source. So there's a reality of moving towards the temple. That's why temples are built, and the holiest of holy is built, because we judge other people, and people do climb, and people do have climactic points in their life where they do become and can become this this holier than thou creature, this enlightened being that's glowing. And through these steps, and it can come and go and wax and wane, just as all things do. Just because you're enlightened doesn't mean you walk around enlightened 24/7. But maybe it is. Maybe it does. Eventually, it could get to that point. Giving, sharing, loving, expressing this dynamic of there's, just as there's a Ouija board, there's an antithesis of the Ouija board. Who's going to invent it? All right. Has it already been invented? This is what I'm talking about. The Ouija board was probably who knows about it, but there is an opposite of that. That's the tabernacle, the holiest of holies. Building these holiest of holy places is the geometry of tapping into these stargates, because it's the road to good intentions. The road to hell is paved in good intentions, and almost all the time these are messed up intentions screw it up. But doesn't mean that these don't exist. Just like you can do seances and occult circles and the power of three and the power of certain geometries of, the fifth wheel, the third wheel in a conversation. These proclivities of the universe exist, and you can dial into the good side and the bad side. But with so much of Netflix indoctrinating everybody with evils and evils of all types, and all of the Hollywood and all this stuff, it's like we're only mostly shown the bad side. Right. One of the only movies that shows the good side is, I think, The Last Mimsy, and that came out the year my daughter was born, and I saw it in theaters and just bawled my eyes out. That was the I saw it when she was born, and I was sketching the Sri Yantra in the Dougherty set on multiple layers. Every layer has this integrated interconnectedness, connective geometry that communicates, communicative geometry on all scales. And it's the same geometry that a lot of people are coming to, and there's occult people who are into it, and there's people that are saying that I don't know, I don't want to get into all the details, but this geometry is very, very important. And just as we play with nature and everything is a game, we do germ games, we do war games. We're going to play with the Dougherty set. We're going to open it up, and it's going to, we as a collective, because of the amount of predictive things that it already predicts, it's just the whole sea is embedded with predictive analytics inside of the Dougherty set with real world applications and plasma thrust, high plasma energy, plasma physics, a lot of different things, over unity devices, etc. Looking glass technology. I mean, what is this all about? It's all a mystery. It's all a mystery. And I don't like to have a worldview or an umwelt that shows that everything is damned. I don't like to believe that, because I don't think that it's damned. Sure, there's.
What I missed? What happened?
The Bible says that there's a curse on humanity, and we can't break out of the curse.
There's a generation. Yeah.
Okay, let me tell what I think that amounts to. Okay, it's like the idea of guilt tripping people, over sin is like, that's the basic business model of the Levites, right? I mean, you get down to it, that's what you're talking about. And this is what I believe is the gist of what Nietzsche had to say. He said Jews and Christians spend too much time worrying about sin. I believe that sin is a bad thing, it should be avoided, right? But I mean, it shouldn't be the focus of your life.
No. But you need to discover it. What you're doing is wrong. Different things on your own level, not based on others. Like even in the Christendom, they believe that a lot of people believe that they're above their sins because they can sin and then use it as grace because God forgives, and then sin and use it as grace. You know, should I sin in abundance? You know, like.
Well, in the Middle Ages, it's like, you know, they made a business, they perfected the business model, right? It's like what they called, you know, like pay now, sin later, right? I mean, this is like, I had a word for that. I'm sorry?
Act first and ask for forgiveness after.
No, this was like,
Well, there's
they call it indulgences. That's what it was. You bought those, right, at churches and cathedrals, right? It's like, you know, you know, there would be like a book, a book of tickets or something.
The discussion yesterday tended towards the causality black box, which is not small enough to be opened by anybody, nor can it be found anywhere, but we know that it exists and it's nonlinear. So it might be both fractal nonlinear and linear nonlinear. So there's a lot of confusion as to how the causality works. But one thing we can say is there's some kind of charge behavior that's associated with all this. So where certain sins can rob you of your of this charge immediately, even if they don't seem that bad. And then other sins can be pretty bad, and you can keep going for a long time, and yet you're heaping up your reward, is what Jesus called it. He called it a reward, and he meant both the positive and negative rewards.
Yeah,
but you don't know where it's stored.
It's your crowns. It's on your head. It's in your chakra. There's crowns that are cast before the throne. If everything's geared towards coming out of source, all the creatures are face down, bowing towards the center of the throne. And there's creatures that exist. There's the four cherubim that exist, and I don't know. I'm just emphasizing source because this is what it's all about. There's geometries that there's Archimedean spirals and geometries that lead towards source but never get towards source, never get to source. Archimedean spirals that wrap around source and will never ever merge or never ever get the direct energy from source. Whereas the Dougherty set is all source related. It's all what they call the Christic spiral, which I called the Russell spiral, which probably had names before. The square root 2 spiral. These are real, and this is how we're going to get into it. Ball lightning is probably conscious. It's probably there's a sentience to this geometry. If we think life started with a spark of electricity, think of the nutrients in thunder. Think of the ingredients in electricity. That it needs to be electrically neutral, or the soil craves the ingredients from the lightning to build the phosphorus for, you know, decomposition, for life, for fungus, for so electricity. It's tied directly to life, so I don't think of it as a bad thing. Sure, too much of it is bad, right? And just like we dialed in on this technology, we're going to dial into the technology of how nature wraps around itself and creates bodies. And I think that's the geometry of the Dougherty set. And I think as we see these geometries, we'll be able to create different beings just with frequencies, and growth in the labs, etc. I think that certain creatures, entire creatures, can be wiped out, and I think this ties directly into the HARP project and frequencies and mass birds that die sometimes, and they all go in cardiac arrest. Mapping the creatures. Each creature has a frequency signature, right? So pushing this only certain frequency out and playing with it results in mass death. Can result in mass death because it creates a standing wave of that body and it just fries.
Okay, you're talking about a quick and dirty way of getting mosquitoes off the planet? Well, no, look.
No, I think that if you did that, it would be replaced by something else because that's how the phylum works. The node would automatically integrate. We're talking about self-healing circuit here, self-healing circuitry.
No, look, you got 90% of the creatures that ever walked or flown on the Earth are gone now. It's like they haven't come back. It's
exactly, and that's because of the old geometries aren't a circuit anymore. The circuit goes out. The old birkeland currents are they can fizzle out, but they continue to breed new creatures. So during a catastrophic event, all the creatures are wiped out. Those memories are still inside the birkeland currents and in the Van Allen belts and in the helicon physics and helicon waves. And it's tied probably directly to the hydroelectromycelial network. And the global electric circuit must continue. Life must go on as it is. And it continues and creates the plasma morphology creates just morph into different creatures. And they just breathe.
So you believe we could bring some of these creatures of past ages back if we were stupid enough to want to do it?
No, I don't think so.
I think there might be ways to do it. I think there might be ways to do it, but it's more like what it's telling us is there's a prism of a holographic fractal prism that we're allowed to see. And it's like, I don't know what Project Looking Glass is, but someone's been talking about it. And like, it seems like there's an apparatus where people have told me that Project Looking Glass was constructed and the elite saw their doom in 2030, and that's when their doom is. And so they're scurrying to try to like hide in the rocks, like the Bible says. And I think
I want to interject to answer Teddy's question a little bit more thoroughly. The answer is no. And the reason why the answer is no is because of the lossiness. But what Buddy's saying is you can create species that have self-similar properties. So you might be able to create a miniature T-Rex-like animal. And according to the system currently, it would be aviary. It'd be a kind of a bird-like creature. And it would have self-similar properties, but it wouldn't exist that size anyways. Same thing with especially programs that tend to repeat, like crocodilian, lizard-like, roach-like, any of the ones that are very successful, worm-like. You can repeat those all damn day. Dragonfly, but you won't get the same species because the time is different. So the timestamp is different. The lossiness in the system, you lose the DNA evidence, the chain, but the system will spit out something similar or related. So there will be. It's like Triceratops looks a lot like rhinoceros. There's a reason for that. Horns are successful in their function.
There's a beginning of a birkeland current and there's an end of a birkeland current. Okay, there's beginnings of life and there's ends of life. So if you look at it as all filaments leading to nodes, the whole body structure of a creature is also in this holographic hierarchical reality. The whole entire, like you were talking, Teddy, 72 years of the filament of the life cycle of a body, of a being, is there. And that information is in space, it's in the sun, it's connected to probably another system, Andromeda, wherever the sun is drawing its energy from. Now,
presumably the sun is drawing its energy from a birkeland current, which would be the current that created the system in the first place, right? And I'm just wondering whether we might have brother or sister or sibling solar systems out there, along the same birkeland current.
What I wanted to say real quick is that as I'm describing to you, the end of a birkeland current fizzling out is the end of a species existing on planet Earth. So you have the beginning of birkeland currents and you have the end of birkeland currents. Bodies are tied directly to charge in the ether, and not only charge, but the dynamism of, and it's also affected by all the other ether while it's in living life, manifesting mode.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's take, for example, the dodo bird. That was the end of a birkeland current, the very end, fizzling out. And out of that, probably another one formed. And this is why we probably think of life cycles as a lot of people believe in reincarnation, because we see that it's a progressive fabric that we're in, and we're probably going to progress with it. That's a good one-on-one observation.
Okay.
Now,
Can I just point out real quick? Go ahead, sorry.
The dodo bird might have fizzled out and gone out of existence because there's another birkeland current that's a hierarchical or lower hierarchical food system that it was eating on that went away. So if the plant goes away, the animal goes away. If an animal goes away, another animal goes away. They are interdependent on each other. So when one species goes out of existence, it's probably because of something else that went out of existence right before it, and it's a progressive deteriorating. And
but you make it sound as if you needed like an almost infinite number of birkeland currents for our system to exist, right? Whereas, you know, basically the evidence indicates that our entire system was created by a single birkeland current. You know, that's the way that you get Herbig-Haro strings.
I heard Don Scott or someone say there was 56 birkeland currents coming out of the sun. I believe that these birkeland currents are nested inside of each other. And some of the birkeland currents, when they hit the heliopause, they create the drum, and that drumming separates and reverberates the birkeland currents into many fractal disbursements, efficient disbursements of that life. And then even from there, it keeps on going on to create birkeland current around birkeland current around birkeland current, all the way to the point where our entire bodies and the size of our atoms and our solar electric design, global electric, galactic electric design is all scale relative. I can tune into Saturn. That's why Saturnian religions exist. I can tune into Jupiter. I can dial directly into that birkeland current of one of those vortexes and dock on the surface of Jupiter. We have the ability and capacity to within reason to sympathize with these types of energies as they're interconnected.
So just real quick to point out, I just posted a paper there that I found about the blue whirl that you were talking about a few minutes ago. And just perusing it real quick, if you want to discuss it real quick, but the flame and flow structure of the blue whirl is now revealed by solving the 3D time-dependent Navier-Stokes equations coupled to a model for chemical energy release and species conversion from fuel to product for heptane gas. So that's what the study showed was heptane gas. So you go into, kind of get a little bit into Navier-Stokes equations, and you find that those are basically a way to express flow velocity or a dynamic structure of flow velocity. Right?
Yeah.
So then from that, I went, and in this study, it shows the preliminary measurements from the experiments indicate a large variation of the velocity at the vertical boundaries at different stages. Later experiments showed that the blue whirl only occurs within a very narrow range of boundary conditions, i.e. tangential velocity and heat release rate. So you have basically your tangent and your velocity of the velocity and the heat release rates. Both of them have to be in there's a relationship between the two. And then the flame structure is sensitive to these boundary conditions. So what is basically telling me from just this one study alone, and then the definitions of what they're actually saying, is unperturbed, you have a baseline structure. But the moment you start either flowing energy into or out of, which entropy, we discussed earlier, entropy, going into or out of this preliminary boundaried set structure, that's when you have changes that occur. Your birkeland current, so to speak, starts in perpetual motion. It starts in motion based upon I had to keep using the same word, and, Ramon can beat me up on it, but it's the retard potential. So you have this basic structure that's established, and then when you add energy to it or take energy away, it retards the potentiality, and that gives and forms direction to whatever it is that's taking place, whether it's species oriented or anything energetically oriented.
I think I think what you keep wanting to refer to there is just hysteresis. I really do. I don't know. Maybe go and look at hysteresis and see if, I don't care about the word retarded, but I think that's what you're trying to get at is hysteresis.
Maybe. I don't know. I'll look at go ahead, and if you want to define hysteresis for those folks.
Oh, I think that hysteresis,
Mine, yeah, go ahead.
Getting beyond the use of it in magnetism, I think that hysteresis speaks to the memory of the system. It's a tendency, it's like inertia, it's an inertia within the behavior of the system. So the reason that things aren't changing instantly is that the system remembers what it has Newton's law happening on a charge and magnetic level as well as in motion. And so that is my take on hysteresis. I know that obviously Steinmetz put forward a 1,000-page book describing it much better than any of us here could, but that's just what I would take a look at, for that topic. But anyways,
I hear you. I look at it from more the Gaussian wave type structure being. That's what in reference to it being for me. It's more in relationship to the Gaussian wave retarded potential.
I mean, you're not bothering me at all. If you want to do more research on it, that's where I would start.
Because you have to have an observation point for understanding it. So one is I think hysteresis is fine, but it's limiting, and it's because it's not taking into account observation. But anyway, that's another story. We can get into that later.
When I found hysteresis, it was because of the geometry. Actually, I did a presentation at the University of Science and Philosophy titled, I think, Sonobiology Frequency, Fractals, Filaments, Frequencies, and I show the relationship of hysteresis to the geometry, and literally how I found it is how they drew what hysteresis looks like and how they use the It's crazy. I'm just like, I didn't think when I saw it, I was like, it makes perfect sense, because I knew how important the overlapping of the rope. There's an interconnectedness of this hysteresis. It's like the memory record of everything.
Double helix. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a memory record to everything, and I want to pull up the video just to show you guys, because I don't have images right off the bat of what this hysteresis is, but I think it'll help put things into perspective. Let me pull it up.
See, but basically the whole point that I'm making is retarded potentials are related to electromagnetic fields that are basically, here, I'm reading it here, I'll read it here. Say that retarded potentials are related to electromagnetic fields of a current or a charge distribution that vary in time. Hysteresis is just looking back and recording and taking account based upon actions that occurred. So that's a accountability towards the looking backwards. Whereas looking at the now and the present, you're looking at what can happen going forward based upon your point of observation. So when I say retarded potential in the Gaussian wave, I'm saying, okay, looking at that particular, let's say, blue whirl right now, based upon all these conditionalities that are hitting it right now in the now, we can also take into account the past and utilize hysteresis for that. But in the now, in the moment now, you need to know what all potentials are basically right now, or all forces that are acting on that particular, let's say, blue whirl or that birkeland current, what is acting on it now in order to determine, you can utilize hysteresis, yes, but you need to know the forces that are acting upon the blue whirl now in order to determine where it's going to end up going or what it's going to do or the functionality of it, or to even observe what let's say, creature stacking that particular birkeland current is connected to describe it, properly. You would need to know all of the retarded potentials of that particular item that you're observing at that moment. Hysteresis is just, I think, a mapping of what that retarded potential was for that particular birkeland current. So you can also use that as well, I think, to generate your equation to determine what point inside of the node that you are, or what point inside of the birkeland current you're looking at, or which stack. But I think you need to also take into account all of the retarded potential. Anyway, that's my thought process as I'm speaking out loud. I'm just talking out loud with my thoughts. That's all.
Right.
I just found
People, I got to take off here. I've got like a couple of errands I have to run. Okay, I'll catch up with you in the near future, hopefully.
Great
Okay.
talk, Teddy.
All right.
Right.
Good time,
Take
man.
care.
Yeah, good time. Good talk, Freddie.
Cheers, Ted.
So I just found it.
Did anything I just say make sense at all, or was I just talking from a redneck
I was looking
definition
at this, so I don't know. I was trying to find this and I found it.
No, it did
Money.
it did actually make sense because that's
It
how
seems
you go
coherent to me.
forward with a numerical analysis. You know, you find out the factors that have caused where you get to now, up to now, and then you can use those factors to evaluate with your most modern data where it's going to lead to. You know, and if those are the only factors, it should give you a good indication. If they're not, then you've missed something. So I think it's a good way to go forward. Yeah.
I think it explains it perfect. I've heard you talk about the Gaussian retarded potential, and I just shared what I was talking about link in the chat here of the image. When I found what hysteresis was, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what these ropes are doing. There's a interconnectedness. Ramon, if you could go to the chat, maybe pull that up. The top one, not the bottom one. The first one of the three. No, that's what I was talking about earlier. That's a lens flare. This, if you zoom in on that image on the top.
That is not. It's not. That's not an option. It just zooms back out.
Oh, gotcha.
Why don't you just grab the screen and then share, and then grab the screen and then zoom in on it on your computer live.
Share
I got
screen.
a patient. I got another patient walked in. You wouldn't want me driving anyways.
This. Can you see that? That's a drawing of the diagrams are a drawing of hysteresis. And that
Right, but see, that's all looking at the past.
Yeah. That same shape is right here inside the filaments, how they overlay inside this rope form. I know it's a diagram versus an actual geometry, but I just saw the connection there, and I just wanted to show off that why
That's
and
great.
how.
Yeah. So each one of those individual, I guess, mapped out XY coordinate type. I don't know what that shape would be called. That's fitting inside of one of those particular lanes. See, how many lanes up is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 stacked. So, but that's not where your stacking is occurring, is it? That's just your boundary. What I think what we may be looking at there is just the boundary for this particular birkeland current. So you have your boundary set up and established there. So that's your boundary, your external boundaries for your birkeland current, and then also a good mapping of that. And then to determine where it's going to go next, you would need to know basically the scalar, functionality of that particular diagram going forward.
And the memory
and then
is
relationship
inherent.
with all, yeah.
The memory is inherent on the outside bubble. I think that the bubbles have films and membranes. I think that's why hysteresis occurs like that, because this is the outside bubble of the first filament, which earlier someone was talking about Robert Edward Grant saying that the first one off of the source, first one is the electron, which kind of makes a lot of sense here. The memory of the system being recorded out on the outside film with the electrons. But that's 40 minutes and 40 seconds into my presentation I shared with the group.
40-40.
And then that's a lens flare showing the blue world geometry. And then someone took that over and overlaid it directly on the the blue world geometry I did. And it lines up and shows that sphere, that circle inside of that, even shows the circle and how they interrelate. And I call this the taxonomy of opposed spiral vortices, and that these vortices occur inside of the wave fields of all systems and all geometries. It's on the very inside. Everything goes through this type of morphology. All wave fields. It's interesting. But anyway, you could probably build on top of a skyscraper or something, some sort of a mechanism that's like a blue whirl, or inside of a tube that's connected to Birkeland currents, and harness the energy from the atmosphere, which we've been doing for a long time. And that's why the Tibetan temples and all sorts of different temples mimic the same type of geometry that we see here in the Dougherty set, and even the housing structures that people live in. Adobes and things. But yeah.
I think it's interesting that the study that I was reading here about the blue world, they utilized heptane as the main alkaline with chemical formula H3C. So it's a straight chain alkaline that they used. And then the structure of that is quite interesting in itself. Just the overarching, you know what I mean? Just heptane itself, to be able to establish at least the preliminary boundaries of what generates a blue whirl, and then to be able to get your scalar differences from that. You know, I think it's a 0 point. So basically 100% heptane fuel is the 0 point of the octane rating scale. So what causes, a freaking engine to combust, so to speak? It's a 0 point. So I think it's interesting that they utilized heptane for that, and it's great that they were able to see it. They did it, according to that study, they found out this whole concept of blue whirls completely, on an unrelated topic study that was being done. So now they have this amazing, a coincidence that has now turned into utilizing heptane or septane, is another name, septane, but septane fuel as a 0 point for the octane rating scale. Utilizing that to get a baseline mapping of what we're talking about here for the last frickin' 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
So it's, you know what I mean? To get a baseline mapping scale for your boundary set, and then with that boundary set, then turn around and then scalarly map out your hysteresis. And then also, then once you have that boundary set, your hysteresis, you can then equate your now utilizing Gaussian wave functions as well as the scalar predictivity of the past with hysteresis. You then can go forward utilizing the Gaussian wave retard potentials in order to properly mitigate your dangers of, having crossing into another path of another Birkeland current or another stack of creature speciation.
Yeah, I think
I think we just did that. Damn, good stuff.
Yeah, heck yeah, that's great. That's
my head hurts.
I just keep thinking about bubbles and how bubbles occupy and push out all the space of the medium that they move through. And I don't know, there's like a Publisherian bubble or something, like I don't even know what to.
Yeah, but the only issue I have with that is when you have two energized plasma fields and they go into a self-alignment state for the molecules and the gases around them. When those two plasma fields come close to one another, they don't have what we know of right now, a visual effect or any kind of an effect over one another as of yet. We don't know unless those two plasma states are formed together and then separated. Then you'll have the overlapping double layers have an effect on one another and probably be I don't even know the right terminology to use here, but have a direct effect of one another. But so that's when it gets into the bubble concept. I hear you, but I don't know that, sound, yes.
Well, the bubble's
and
like an egg. The bubble's like an egg, but I've been having this Bailey, come here. I've been having this premonition for a while. I haven't fully figured out exactly what it's trying to tell me. But there's
that might be it, man. Sound does act in the way of a bubble, like you're talking about, like it pushes energy out in all directions as it travels.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
if you have an echo, you'll have a reverberation, et cetera, all these type things. But any other energetic form doesn't necessarily have that same. I think sound might be exclusive in that, function like that. It might be exclusive. I'm not saying that it is, but sound might just be exclusive in its nature like that. And that gets into Teddy's language theory and all this other stuff. I mean, it kind of correlates with all that, but it's maybe sound has its own, like you're saying, a bubble effect for every piece of matter and energetic charge as well as etheric charge around it. Sound is the end all be all, the preliminary stack, so to speak, the initiating node. And then from that, everything else grows or is determined based upon that first originating sound.
So that could be like the outside layer is sound, and there's sounds in between the layers, the double layers. The double layers would be sound. There would be frequencies.
But energy, and as we've defined it, might not have that same capability as what sound does. It's that sound is what is actually causing all of this, that we've all, let's say, like shock waves. We've always just thought that was air being pushed, but in reality, it's just sound.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, man. I keep interrupting you. My bad. Your train of thought.
No, that's good. That makes sense because, and then it would go through sonolumination or what is it? Bioluminescence.
Yeah, but only if the radioactive decay is the potential for the radioactive decay is retarded enough to cause the effect of photon release, which it has to be in a certain boundaries again for that to occur, and it's all instantaneous. It's not something we could observe in our eyeball or in speed, and really because it's just so quantifiably fast. But it's because that occurs, the substance that it's moving through has to have the correct boundary system established with the radioactive decay and match to release the photons or to release that energetic form that we call light, and also in that frequency and in that spectrum range of that frequency to get a color out of it.
I think our gut microbiome is attached to these filaments too. Our gut microbiome,
like, in our stomach.
Yeah, like Donnie Darko style. We got tubes coming out of our chest and our, in a way.
Maybe so.
I mean, everything.
Watch that movie again. It's been years.
We were talking about the hairs being connected to it, and the hair standing up on the back of your head before something happens.
Right.
That's probably, I don't know. Could be an acoustic
antennae.
Yeah, it's like antennae.
But But it's
But yeah.
but it's resonating sound on a different wave that our different boundaries that our ears have.
Yeah, yeah. There's sound scaffolding all the way up. There's light scaffolding all the way up and all the way down.
All the way up. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's donuts all the way up, all the way down. You know.
Damn. See, so you can use the solfeggio frequencies of the solfeggio type frequencies to lay out a map almost for any blue whirl, Birkeland current type Dougherty set, just like we've been talking about. You could utilize the Doppler effect as your source, so the scalar, I guess, distance of sound being reduced, similar to like the Doppler effect from a point of source. Use that, as we just discussed, to map out all these other things in the terms of hysteresis and the Gaussian wave functions. Map that all out utilizing solfeggio frequencies, and then apply the Doppler effect scale in order to scale everything to get your originating point, and then you're also your what's the word, originating point, and then the opposite. What's the opposite of your terminal point? So you have your originating point and your terminal point both determined by that scalar function of the Doppler effect within the boundaries of what we all just talked about here with the hysteresis and Gaussian wave functions, all put and plotted through the map of the Dougherty set practice.
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, look at there. Somebody write that down. Damn, somebody write that down.
It was recorded. There.
There we go. I would never be able to repeat it, man. Damn. It's like that Will Ferrell guy, and he's having that debate. Did I black out? Damn.
Man, yeah. There's it's all.
I think there's
mystery.
something definitely there. Yeah, it's all, but it's all related.
Yeah.
I think if anything, it's all related, and there's a way to untangle it. It's just it's a what is that, the knot with Alexander and his sword? What was that knot called? He sliced it with a sword. I mean, it's like that. We've got this tangled web that we've been all trying to untangle, and it's really Occam's razor. It's the simple explanation. We just need to slice it in half instead of sitting there trying to untangle this ball. Just slice it in half. Give it all it's what it is. Listen to what we're being told from what you're having dreams about, what Ramon's studying, what Nicholas is throwing out there, what Rick's putting in, what, Gamma-mead. If I hear Gamma-mead again, it's Gamma-mead. All of these hypotheses that we get, got going all together. It's creating a flow. We just all need to pay attention to it, I think.
Indeed. Well, this has been a great talk, guys. I'm gonna have to roll out.
I'm definitely tired. I'm gonna go play with the dogs.
Yeah, this is an awesome episode.
Nicholas, thanks, man. Thanks for holding in there for so long. I know it's getting late there, buddy.
Happy days, yeah. I'm just doing a little bit of geometry as we're chatting, so happy days. I've got my pencil and my stylus and what is it, compass, and off I go.
Rocking and rolling.
Yeah,
that's the best way to do it. First-hand experience. Yeah. See how it's all connected.
That's it. I think it is. You do improve with the more you do anything, really, and the better an understanding you get at it, and I think that's with music and everything. And I'm looking forward to trying it out with everything. What we're learning. So great.
Do me a favor. Check out those Navier-Stokes equations I sent in the link in relation to what we've been talking about here. See if they can't plug and play for you some.
Oh, yeah.
I'll have a look at those, yeah.
Please. Thanks.
Yeah, cheers. All right, guys. See you soon.
All right, guys. Y'all be good. Ramon, we'll talk to you soon, man. I think he's got a client, but y'all be good. I'll talk to y'all later.
See y'all.
All right. Cheers.
The Geometric View is a Love is Watching product. Love is Watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen. all over the wall, eyes all over your body. Can I just see straight through with transparent golden scaling? The largest of the edifice embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism, need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, arrow in your back, arrow in your lungs, zero into the back, tertiary, Christian neuron, synapses, and narrow entrance into eternity. I'm a courier, a charismatic attitude, modern meters even neater, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be's a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man who brought you change. Every second you ride, to make the ribbon, you pivot, potential, you curve and cat. Could be cold, could be copycat, could be copy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best. Could be micro-hacker, Mackie normal, open-minded, itsy-bitsy, freaking huge, a universal supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. Are you aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. The new thing consumption. Collaborative consumption. Consumption. Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did this up? We don't got about a girl, but about a goddess spirit. Get up, what's up? Get out, tap comes. They don't put up. I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm in airdrop, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang.